Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1558 of the War News Stream. And tonight we have very big news out of the Middle East and out of Europe as well. We are currently seeing that Iran launched brand new attacks on US-backed forces, apparently in Iraq, and also on another ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Also, apparently a top IRGC official today got blasted near Tehran, and apparently it's the lone gunman. Nobody knows who did it, and apparently they got away. But also, Russia has been panicking today, even worse, and handing out voucher cards over the critical fuel shortages that are getting much worse in Crimea. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world as we have been able to hear of significant developments in most every single corner of the globe over the course of this day. As we have been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has conducted significant attacks against US-backed allies within northern Iraq in the form of the Kurdish forces in the city of Erbil, and we've also been able to hear that a commercial tanker appears to have been hit at some point in time by the Islamic Republic of Iran when it was attempting to be escorted by US warships through the area of the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear for the second day in a row that the blockade is still ongoing, although we were told that the blockade would no longer be continuing and sailors would be able to return home to their families. It appears that they are not returning home to their families, and it appears that this is not going to be going all too well in the long run. We've also been able to additionally hear that the acting defense minister has told the United States and U.S. allies within the region to sleep with one eye open, as it does appear that at the moment the Iranians are still largely posturing as if the war will be beginning anytime soon, although we haven't been able to see clear indications of that, at least at the moment right now. We've also been able to hear some other significant developments as well inside of the region, as we've also been able to hear that the state of Israel has continued to come under significant rocket attacks today by Hezbollah forces within northern Israel, and we've also been able to see that outside of all this information in the Middle East, the Russian fuel crisis is continuing to worsen and is growing larger by the day. We're largely seeing that at this moment the Russian Federation is now now having to issue fuel vouchers throughout the entirety of the southern front's area of responsibility, including the Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea oblasts, with citizens of the Crimean Peninsula largely getting into an absolute state of panic over the situation right now and assuming that the end is nigh. Romanian investigators have also concluded that the drone that was used in the Galati attack was that of a Garan 2 of Russian design. And we've also been able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces have been inflicting significant losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces today and stopping generally all advances over this direction in the past 24 hours. Ukrainian drone attacks have also caused major damage in the Russian rear line areas as well, and we are seeing that a major fire has broken out near to the smaller town of Lazarevo within the area of the Kirov Oblast, which I was about to call the Ronin Oblast for no reason. But nevertheless, we have a humongous amount of news, and we're going to be covering all of these stories, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. But I do have to point out...
Yes, I see you know you're turned up well. Good one, sir. Am I coming through loud and clear at this point? I saw the enforcer turn me up a little bit, so hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear right now. As a test of that, by the way, I'll take over this small segment right here to test out the volume. We do have a fundraiser running tonight, folks. It is Sunday, of course, and we have Nova Ukraine running tonight, actually, which is one of them that we flip around from time to time. Sometimes we'll run Razom, sometimes we'll run Nova. Both of them are really good fundraisers, and tonight it is Nova Ukraine. So if you can afford it and you can actually pull it off, feel free to donate tonight to help out Nova, because of course they're doing great work inside of Ukraine, and hopefully y'all can hear me good now too. But Enforcer, what say you?
And blood is turn up. The jit is turned. But beyond that, I have to say it's really weird because I've never had to raise your audio before in all of channel history, and you're at 150%, and I have a feeling you probably still sound a little quiet right now. So I'd have to say it's probably something on your system end, because it's on the Discord call. So you might want to look into that at some point. But moving us on into the rest of the news that we do have for the night, it is time for us to move on down and into the area of the Strait of Hormuz, as we have been able to hear of significant developments within this area over the course of the day and also throughout the entirety of the Middle East, which is showing us that the Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing some low-level attacks against US-backed allies and US assets within the area. Most importantly, reports of explosions did come out once again from the city of Erbil once more, as it does appear that Iranian missiles were targeting Kurdish bases in the area today. We largely will assume that some of these missiles have most likely impacted near or onto the facilities that were targeted and were able to cause some damage, as we've not been able to hear of any reports of the missiles being successfully shot down. So I would have to say that at this moment in time, we're generally getting that there is some sort of damage that did happen within the area of Erbil against Kurdish forces, but we're not entirely sure what extent of the damage has been caused so far. Moving us on out of that bit of news, we've also been able to hear that simultaneously, there does appear to be some additional information that's come out showing that around 2 to 3 days ago, a US-escorted tanker, a 252 meter long ship, appears to have been on fire after 4 Iranian speedboats conducted an attack on the vessel while it was attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz. From what we largely understand, the vessel was being escorted by the United States Navy through the area, as far as stories have gone that we've seen elsewhere, and we've also been able to see as well some additional satellite photography here in geolocation of the exact spot of the incident. This is somewhat close to prior incidents that we have seen where the Iranians did conduct attacks on vessels at anchorage in the area of the Strait of Hormuz, and we've also seen that a couple of vessels have been hijacked around that area as well. However, no UK MTO report was ever given for this vessel that appears to have been hit and heavily damaged by IRGC fast attack boats, and it is showing us that the Islamic Republic of Iran is conducting a large amount of escalatory actions, of which the United States government is either underplaying heavily or is completely outright denying and not even attempting to cover the developing story or situation pertaining to the ship within the Strait of Hormuz, which we now have evidence of 3 days later being hit and heavily damaged by an IRGC attack, or the attacks that continue against the Kurds, which are a US-backed ally within northern Iraq, which have come under significant attacks over the entirety of the ceasefire period, which has lasted for nearly 2 months now. This is starting to lead a lot of people to question what exactly is going on at this point, whether the United States is just incapable of preventing the attacks or not, or whether the US was never escorting the ship and it just happened to come under attack, because for some reason sudden, out of the blue, the captain and the crew just decided that that time was the best time to try and cross, and then it ended up coming under attack from the Iranians. One thing that we can confirm, however, outside of the questions surrounding the situation in northern Iraq and also the Strait of Hormuz, is that we are starting to see that around the area of the blockade line, the blockade has not ended. U.S. Central Command has come out today and stated that new vessels have been redirected because of the blockade, and the U.S. has also disabled 5 vessels in support of the naval blockade. This comes after yesterday, a vessel that was actually flagged out of Gambia was apparently forcibly disabled by the United States Navy and boarded due to attempting to break and violate the U.S. blockade within that area. This all comes after a statement from the president 2 days ago, where we were able to hear that ships calm the strait due to our amazing and unprecedented naval blockade, which will now be lifted, may start the process of heading home. We have actually not seen that the strait, or largely the blockade, has been lifted, as was stated by the president 48 hours ago, and it is still in effect at this moment, meaning that there is a great deal of questionability about what exactly is going on with U.S. planning in this area, whether the president just said that and that was never the plan, or anything else in between, which we're just not entirely sure of what's really going on, at least here at the moment. But it is quite a wild and confusing situation, to say the least. We were told 2 days ago that the blockade would be ending, and 2 days later, the blockade is still in effect in this area of the blockade line, which is quite odd. We've also been able to hear some other reports from inside of Iran, but before we get into those, I do want to make sure to circle back to the situation with the strikes in northern Iraq, and also on the commercial vessel 3 days ago that we now have confirmation of by satellite footage. And Matthew, what are people thinking about those situations right now, and what are you thinking about them as well?
Okay, so that was a pretty big revelation that came out today, that apparently about 48 hours ago, Iran sent out their fast attack boats and also apparently struck one of these commercial tankers in the Strait of Hormuz using either drones or missiles, one or the other. And we did see the satellite proof that Iran was engaging a commercial vessel that was allegedly being escorted by the U.S. Navy in the Strait. And what are your thoughts about that? It seems like a strange thing to happen if it is being escorted. 62% said the U.S. cannot prevent these style of attacks by Iran. 28% said the U.S. likely was not escorting the ship and it's probably false, and 2% said it was probably just an error and maybe somebody got confused. And I don't think there's any confusion here. It's very clear from the satellite footage what was happening with it. A commercial vessel was trying to transit the strait. Iran sent out their boats to engage the vessel. They then hit it with munitions, and they clearly attacked it because they were trying to transit the strait freely, and Iran doesn't want that to happen because they weren't able to collect their toll at the toll booth. So I'm with the 61%. It seems like the United States generally cannot prevent these style of attacks, and it's not really clear if the U.S. Navy responded to that situation. We have not heard any reports or any official confirmation that the U.S. Navy fired back at those vessels or did anything, for that matter, militarily to ward off the attack. So to me, it sounds, if that's what the escorts look like, that's pretty weak right there. That's pretty much pointless to a large degree. So I'm with the 61%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that at the moment, I would generally be with the 61% as well, in that the U.S. cannot prevent the attacks at the moment, because the amount of threats that exist within the Strait of Hormuz is too great for a U.S. Escort to be successful. Like I've stated on the channel an endless amount of times, whether some people want to hear this or not, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz requires a specific checklist sort of an approach of what we have to achieve for a ship to pass through even under escort. That requires us to conduct suppression of enemy air defense activities around the strait, as there are clearly still radar-based air defense systems operational in the area. Then we have to start attacking and destroying the land-based anti-ship threats, anti-ship missiles, drones, and the like, to be able to stop them from attacking the forces or the escorts in the Strait of Hormuz to as large a number as they would right now. Then we also have to go in and start slowly demining while keeping a significant armed presence within the strait and possibly occupying the islands around the unmined shipping lanes to try and pre-secure them and ensure that safe passage can be conducted once escorts begin. Then and only then, once we have cleared out the area and lowered the risk of attacks to a reasonable level, can we begin escorts of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. And so far, we have not achieved a single one of those checks on that checklist over 2 months now, meaning that any attempted escorts, like I have been saying on the channel, and it's always funny, people always say that we don't know more than the government or the president. I would say that with this kind of approach, we certainly would know more, because they're clearly not succeeding in not achieving any of the checklists that we've already talked about to be able to make it safe enough to get a ship through the Strait of Hormuz, and satellite pictures like these are showing that clearly. Some preemptive military actions have to be taken before an escort can be commenced safely through the strait, where they're either not running headlong into Maham 3 and Maham 7 mines in the minefield, or they're sailing directly into the middle of an Iranian anti-ship gauntlet between Kashim and Larak Island, or just a little south of it. Anything less than this will result in failure like we've seen right now. And so I would have to say that I'm clearly with the 62% for that reason. We have also been able to see that the Iranians are attempting to increase their available firepower over the past several weeks, as more satellite footage is coming out showing that right now, 50 of the 69 tunnel entrances that were bombed out by the United States during the conflict have been excavated, and it does appear that Iran is still conducting missile launches, even with reduced production capacity, if launch crews and launchers remain operational. This missile base that was satellite photographed in Desful, Iran, 4 of the 5 entrances to the underground facility could be seen reopened. And much like I've been telling people for a while, and I hate to say, folks, that much like we've been telling people, but it is dead on the nail, this is exactly what we've been saying to folks, bombing the entrance of a tunnel does not destroy the tunnel. If you hit the front door of a house with a battering ram, the whole house doesn't come crumbling down to its foundations. And a tunnel works the exact same way. The entrance is just the door to the house. You can end up destroying or heavily damaging the door, and the rest of the house can still remain intact. Right now, there are hundreds of missiles, thousands of missiles as a matter of fact, that are sitting inside of these tunnels, largely intact, and the only thing that the United States was capable of hitting and destroying were these tunnel entrances into the tunnel. Once the Iranians were able to clear their way back in, they were able to access all of the munitions that they were prior not able to access because of the successful U.S. airstrikes that had blocked the entrance. The only thing that we can do with these sorts of tunnels, as far as our strategic outlook, is deny the Iranians access to the inner tunnel areas, meaning that we can deny them the ability to use the missiles in the tunnel, but there's no way that hitting the tunnel directly is going to destroy anything inside, meaning that to keep these inoperable for the Iranians, we have to continue a continuous air campaign and come back every couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, with reconnaissance and check to see that these tunnels are still unexcavated. If it looks like any excavation work is going on the site to try and access the missiles, then we have to conduct secondary airstrikes and tertiary airstrikes to ensure that either the excavation teams are wiped out or that the tunnel entrances are caved in once again, and it is once again rendered inaccessible.
It is really remarkable, though. It apparently took Iran just about a month, or just slightly over a month, to pretty much dig out, like, what is this, about 80% of their tunnel networks going down to these underground missile cities. It didn't take them very long at all to get back in. It's kind of faster than I thought they were going to take to get back in. But I think the U.S. assessment was it would take them about a year to get back down into these places, which that was extremely wrong, to say the least. It only took them a fraction of the time to get back into these missile cities. So they're saying here in the post, based on information from a mainstream outlet, that 50 of the 69 tunnel entrances are apparently excavated and they're underway with repairs. So, I mean, it sounds like they got most of their missile capability back at their disposal pretty quick.
They did get it back a lot quicker than U.S. intelligence said. And I gotta say, folks, that I hate to say it, but a lot of U.S. statements, especially as of late, generally we've seen that credibility has been sliding slowly over the past several years, but as of late, it's becoming almost completely pointless to listen to anything that most U.S. agencies or officials say, because they hardly get anything accurate, either due to incompetence or a complete lack of understanding of the situation. I'm not really sure what it is, or just the deliberate attempt to mislead the public, but it's quite obvious that blowing away a tunnel entrance isn't going to take a year to excavate a site. It's not like the Iranians Iranians have to go and have an ecological study and then apply for an excavation permit and then get the crews there and then show up and do a couple of bids to see which company is actually going to excavate it. And then after all of that, they have to set a tentative date to dig out the tunnel entrance. It's not like they're doing all of this red tape stuff. They just get a couple of guys. They get like, Shalami or whoever from the local town, and they go out there with an excavation team and they dig them right back out. So it's a little bit stupid and pointless to make it sound like this is not going to be a significant threat like U.S. intelligence said. And we would have to keep up continuous air campaigns, which is a humongous blunder that we've just made, is that we've been in a ceasefire for 2 months, which hasn't allowed for a continuous air campaign, because we're basically allowing the Iranians in real time to restore all of their missile and long-range attack capabilities against the United States and our allies once the war inevitably resumes, as there is no other option but the resumption of war at this point right now. We've also been able to hear that according to the acting chief of defense, or I believe the minister of defense, this guy right here, gotta say, he kind of reminds me of like a middle school science teacher. I don't know what it is about him, but he said that new surprises are on the way, and I'm assuming it's not birthday cake. I think it's something militaristic, but once again, the Iranians have made a decent amount of threats like this over the past several months for the larger part, and we haven't really seen them follow through on them much, so we're not really sure if the statement was made for the benefit of the Iranian public to save face and make the Iranians look like they're about to do something, when in reality, they're still just trying to wait out the U.S. economically on the blockade and see that the pressure builds to where eventually the United States will just accept most of their demands, or all of them, or they might actually be planning on conducting direct militant actions, not just against U.S.-backed allies in the region in a vessel that was being escorted by the U.S. Navy in the Strait, but possibly resuming significant large-scale attacks against all of our allies within the Middle Eastern sphere of influence, including the Gulf states, Israel, and others. We've also been able to hear additionally that within the area of the city of Tehran, there have been some very interesting developments today. For one, we did get to hear that earlier in the day, some sources, including Iran International, started to state that the Iranian president Masoud Pezeshkian had requested to step down from his position. According to Iran International, and by the way, folks, we're about, if you already know that the story had some refutes to it by the Iranians, don't worry, we're about to be getting to that. But according to the Iran International, an informed source told Iran International that Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, has requested to step down from his position by sending an official letter to the office of Mujtaba Khamenei, the leader of the Islamic Republic. According to information received by Iran International, Pezeshkian warned in his letter, which was sent in the past few hours in an unprecedented and critical tone, that the structure of the country's administration has effectively deviated from official channels, and that the main pillars of governance have come under the complete control of a specific faction of IRGC commanders. However, we then heard from the IRGC, and make that important note, IRGC-owned Tasnim News. They have denied that Pezeshkian ever sent a resignation letter. At the moment, we're not entirely sure which is true. Once again, we do have to say that there's a lot of misinformation that has been going around on the Iran war, and it appears that both sides have a different story. The IRGC is claiming that no resignation letter was ever sent to Mujtaba Khamenei or anyone else in the Iranian government. Iran International is stating that the letter was sent, and Pezeshkian was stating that a significant jingoist militia group or jingoist group in the IRGC was largely trying to run the country single-handedly and continue them down the path of war due to their radical ideology. I would have to be honest with y'all, I'm generally taking more so the story of the IRGC that Masoud Pezeshkian didn't send in the letter, because to make this a little bit clear for everybody, to be in the Islamic Republic of Iran's government, you have to be a radicalized ideologue to be in the government. There really isn't such a thing as this little radical faction, a part of the radical group. That's like saying the Soviet Union and the Chinese Communist Party aren't radical communists. It's just this little hardliner group in there that's communist, but the rest of them are basically capitalists.
Yeah, I think that's a silly argument. Why I see people making that argument that, oh, look, it's just these little small group of hardliners inside of Iran, inside of their government that really want to push this thing forward. It's like, yeah, I mean, of course, in every system of governance, there's going to be people that are more radical than the other ones. But generally, though, everybody's of the same cloth to a large degree. They're not in that system without sharing some of the values of the other people within the system. So they're not completely different. Like the president of Iran is not like this, free-thinking democratic saint. He's not that way. This whole story that they're trying to create like this rift between the IRGC and the other part of the government, that's bogus. They're playing good cop, bad cop. That's what they're doing. It's a strategy to try to negotiate. That's what they're up to. So they all want one thing. They all chant death to America. They all say death to Israel. And that's the common thread right there. Everything else is just noise. And also, it's like, if this guy was actually resigning, then let's just wait for the resignation letter. What's with this, like, backroom story about, oh, he wants to resign, but he's sending a letter. He might resign. And no, actually, he's not resigning. It's like, it's just that usual stuff.
And also on top of that, folks, I also had to make it clear that the statements and the reports of Iran's fragility as far as their government apparatus have been greatly over-exaggerated over the past 2 months. Ever since the shooting stopped almost 2 months ago, we have heard every story and every iteration of a story that the Iranian military is conducting a coup and they're overthrowing the government, or the government is trying to overthrow the IRGC, or there's rebellions in the streets, or, Allah himself is descended from the sky, inshallah, to decide the whole fate of the country. We've heard a million different stories on what in the world's going on in Iran, and the reality of it is that there's nothing going on governmentally in Iran, because from what we generally understand, the IRGC Council is running the government in stay of the supreme leader of Mujtaba Khamenei. And so the IRGC Council now holds the position of the supreme leader, and much like it was in the pre-war period, the president of Iran and other quote-unquote elected officials are only figureheads for the semblance of a democratic governmental system. They didn't have any actual power before the war. It's not like Pezeshkian is whining and moaning about losing power now, because he never had any power before, and we already knew that because Ali Khamenei was the one calling all of the shots, and Pezeshkian was just basically there to make it look a little bit more legitimate. And then also his friend before him, the former president that got slammed on the side of a mountain in a helicopter up in northern Iran, he was also just there to give it an air of legitimacy. The government in Iran, the parliament and the presidential office, only exist as a figurehead form of a government. All the decisions are made by whoever's a step above them, which would be Ali Khamenei before the war, and the IRGC Council, or Mujtaba, at this moment right now, which is highly likely the IRGC Council. So moving us on out of that little bit of news on that development, we've also been able to hear that a top-level IRGC official was apparently assassinated today in Tehran, which is a pretty wild thing to see in the middle of this all. This is actually the damage from this attack on this IRGC official that apparently happened in the Andasha suburb or province of the city of Tehran. And here's the clip here showing the building's windows blown out. I'm not really sure if the bulge of the building over here is normal. There looks to be some minor shrapnel damage to the exterior, but it looks like the explosion came from in the inside and also blew a decent amount of glass out into the street.
Yeah, and also there was this one right here, which appears to have been a bomb inside the building that went off, because the windows are all blasted outward. They're not blasted inward. They're sort of like leaning to the outside of the building, so it seems to suggest that it exploded outwardly. But also there was apparently, or at least allegedly, another targeted assassination on the coast, apparently near Bandar Abbas as well, shortly after this one took place.
I actually don't believe I have that one, but we did get to hear, and let me make sure here really quickly. Yeah, this one's still about the one in Andasha. I actually don't have that one on the map at the moment, but the targeted individual was supposedly, at least in the Iran attack, Vahid Haqqan, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I was about to say the F letter on the front of that one, and that would have come out totally different. Who was responsible for importing satellite dishes for IRIB, as well as managing contracts between the IRBE and the IRGC's Khatam al-Anbiya. So it does appear that at the moment this appears to have been an assassination most likely conducted by the Mossad, because the CIA, to be honest with y'all folks, doesn't really care as much about what people say, like especially in that regard, or people who are helping others to continue to say things. Other than the Mossad, the CIA doesn't care this much about the stuff. The Mossad will go out of their way to try and blow up anyone in the Middle East who's saying things that might be considered harmful to the state of Israel. So this sounds to me like Mossad agents were on the ground, apparently conducting this attempted assassination in Tehran, as it seems to fit the description of most prior attacks that we've seen in the Middle East over the prior years that were conducted by Mossad against similar such people, either in Lebanon or the Gaza Strip. So fairly likely that was the group behind the attack, although although, once again, we don't know for sure. It's just that there's a lot of telltale signs there that it probably was. Outside of that, though, a lot of people are talking about these assassination attempts, especially the one that we were just covering. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this right now? And I would have to be honest with you, Matthew, I'm actually a little bit blindsided by this because I didn't know the poll was about this assassination and who everyone thinks is behind it. But it looks like everyone's thinking the same thing I am. So what is everyone thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so we did see, and we have the video evidence to back this up, there was a targeted assassination that was carried out just outside of Tehran on an IRGC operative, allegedly. So who do you think was behind it? It looks like 62% said Israel was behind it, while 20% said the US was behind it, and 12% said it sounds like a joint operation. So, just so everybody knows this, the U.S. has intelligence sources inside of Iran, but not nearly to the level of Mossad, which is the intelligence service, the foreign intelligence service of Israel. Israel has Iranians that are on the payroll all over the place, all over that country. So, if there is some sort of targeted assassination, it is almost certainly probably Israel that carried it out. They could have carried it out with the blessing of the United States. That could be possible, but the ones that would be doing the legwork on the ground would be the Mossad. It would be Israel doing it. Now, if it was something different, like an airstrike, that could be the United States. But this appears to be a planted explosive inside of a building, and that has the fingerprints of Mossad all over it. So I'm with the 62%. Also, keep in mind, this is what we saw just before the war kicked off the last time. We saw assassinations taking place all over the place inside of the major cities of Iran as well that turned out to be Mossad hit operations. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm well within the belief that this is most likely a Mossad attack rather than any other attack. The chances are extremely high. We have seen Israel conduct attacks very similar in nature and design to this in Tehran before the war and also during the last year. And we've also seen similar such attacks like these being conducted inside of Lebanon and Gaza against forces that were affiliated with Hezbollah or Hamas or were involved in propagating and spreading their message. So I would say that this is highly likely the group that is behind the attack, because it generally does appear to be the case that once again it has very similar telltale signs. Moving us on out of that, we also get to see that within the area of Karaj there appears to have been some interesting activity in the skies above. We were able to see right here that someone made a post about it and they said something in, I'm pretty sure that's Arabic. But moving us into
They said there's jet activity. Inshallah, take cover, run for help, call your relatives, hide your mother, hide your wife, because they're getting everybody out here.
Man, honestly, man, you don't have to come and confess. We're gonna find you. Man, but anyways, here's the clip.
Holy moly, look at that. Zebediah Carter just threw in 1,000 Canadian to the fundraiser right now. You see that?
Oh my lord, I just saw that. That's unbelievable. We just hit $1.4 thousand in the blink of an eye, thanks to none other than Zebediah Carter. Unbelievable thing. In the middle of
wild right there. Yeah, we're just about 65% to the way to the goal right now. It's fantastic. We're literally with just that single donation from Zebediah right there.
I gotta say, folks, it's absolutely insane right there. Such an eventful donation in the middle of this most uneventful clip. The juxtaposition of it, like, it's unbelievable. A huge shout out to you, by the way. That is an incredibly humongous donation right there, and it's gotten us well on the way to getting towards the fundraiser goal. We also have this other clip right here, also showing the night sky once again. A lot of stargazers in Iran. And we also got this one last clip here, and oh my goodness. Oh my god, it's an aircraft. Whoa. There it is.
It's an aircraft. Look at that. It's moving around right there. I think it might be out of range of possibly air defense fire.
Damn. That's unfortunate for the Iranians. Very fortunate for our side. But it does appear that there is some jet activity going on up there in the skies over Iran, more so Tehran at the moment right now. And we'll be keeping an eye on what that generally turns into here in the future. But moving us on out of the whole situation inside of Iran, we've also been able to hear, moving us on over and into Israel, that Israel did come under some rocket attacks today near to Kiryat Shimona within the very northern area of the country. And we also got to see that near to the Sea of Galilee, there were also some strikes as well around Tiberias, which is a very Roman name if I've ever heard it. As a matter of fact, it's so Roman, I'm interested in what this town even looks like. Looks Greek to me. I don't know. It doesn't look Roman though. Maybe this is in Cyprus. But anyways, moving us on out of that whole lame joke right there, it is time for us to move on out of the state of Israel, as we do understand that it's highly likely that Israel is going to be responding. Just to make sure to round this out with a actual moral of the story here about what we're hearing in northern Israel, it does appear that the Israelis are most likely going to be responding with significant airstrikes. Usually whenever we see that the Hezbollah forces conduct significant rocket attacks in northern Israel, we usually see that there's a reciprocal response by the Israelis of conducting major airstrikes throughout the entirety of Lebanon. We'll most likely see that airstrikes are conducted inside the Baalbek Valley, southern Lebanon, and Beirut, as those are usually the high priority targets for the Israelis to be able to try and bomb with the Israeli Air Force. So we'll be waiting to see what they end up hitting and figure out what that is at some point in the future. So moving us on out of the Middle East at large, it is time for us to now move on up and into what I can only describe as a big story for the day. A really big one, the war in Ukraine. But there is an important little piece of news that we have to give y'all before we get to the war in Ukraine. It appears that from what we can tell, the actual investigation, as in whose drone blew up on an apartment building in Galati, because clearly it wasn't obvious that it was Russia yet, so we had to do a full investigation to find out, has apparently been concluded, as we've seen a lot of pictures come out now of the debris and fragments of this drone, and it appears, folks, that I, with my little eye, was able to identify the exact drone off the bat when it hit the building just minutes afterwards, and it took the Romanians apparently an entire week to be able to figure this one out. So let's take a look at what we got, and let's see what they say. So, also, by the way, a big shout out to Nicurser Dan, the president of Romania, who put out this information today. He really was working hard, folks, with the Romanian government to really make sure, because, it's not entirely clear when a Russian drone hits an apartment building in your country, if it's a Russian drone that hit an apartment building in your country, so they had to make sure to do an investigation to make sure that it was a Russian drone that hit an apartment building in their country. So, according to the president of Romania, this is what he has had to state today. Also, before we even show it, before we even read what he said, let me show you all the pictures here of the motor of the Garand 2, which y'all can see right here. Also, let me show y'all a part of the wing profile where you can quite literally see written into the carbon fiber skin of the drone, it says Garand 2 right there. And we also were able to see additionally other component pieces and parts that were manufactured and assembled in Russia. Clearly, that's Cyrillic. That's also what appears to be a Russian date stamp as well. And then we can also see an additional one right here. So now it's time to read y'all the statement from the president of Romania. The drone that crashed last night in Galati is a Garand 2 of Russian origin. This is unequivocal. This is the unequivocal conclusion of the technical report finalized by Romanian state specialists. The investigation established this based on a substantial body of technical evidence. On the recovered fragments, the inscription in Cyrillic characters Garand 2 was identified, and the electronic components, navigation systems, control modules, engine, and structural elements analyzed show similarities up to and including identity with those of other Garand 2 drones recovered previously on Romanian territory and definitively identified as manufactured in the Russian Federation. The report also shows that the manufacturing markings, technical inscriptions, structural characteristics, and materials used following the same technological process found in Garand 2 drones analyzed in recent years. Physicochemical analyses have confirmed the presence of the same types of materials and fuels repeatedly identified in devices from this series. Based on all these elements, the investigation unequivocally concludes that the fragments recovered in Galati come from a Garand 2 drone of Russian origin. The fact that such a device struck a residential building in Romania, causing injuries and material damage, is of particular gravity, and the sole responsible party is Russia. The safety of Romanian citizens and the integrity of national territory are fundamental obligations of the Romanian state and will be defended with the utmost firmness. The results of this investigation will be communicated to our allies and to the competent structures within NATO and the European Union. Romania will continue to act together with its partners to strengthen security at the alliance's eastern border and to protect its citizens. Romania will not ignore or downplay any incident that endangers the lives of its citizens, national security, or the sovereignty of the Romanian state. So
Oh yeah, I'm sure that they definitely won't downplay this or ignore it by any means. That's probably why they haven't invoked Article 4 to have a conference with the NATO allies, is because they're not downplaying this whatsoever. They're very serious about this, by the way. That's also why they didn't shoot the drone down when it entered their airspace initially either. Now, also, it's like at this point, now that Romania has concluded their investigation and they have the proof, it's like, Putin was just out on the public airwaves yesterday saying that, oh, well, we don't really know if it's a Russian drone or not. It could be anything. It could be Ukrainian drone. It's like, okay, well, now there's proof that it is definitely Russian. We already knew that, by the way, the day of the attack, but now they've proven it through the investigation. So what is Putin going to say about this now? I would imagine he probably won't say anything from this point forward.
well, you know what you'll probably say, these things happen from time to time, especially with countries that don't like us. You might actually just start repeating what the Russian ambassador in Romania said Romania on the last incident of this type, or what Medvedev said, possibly. Or they'll just continue to deny that it's Russian, and they'll say that somehow Ukraine electronically warfared a Garand to the ground, grabbed it, and then reverse engineered it and produced their own to be able to fabricate the whole incident as a false flag, because we all know that would be far easier and far more realistic than a Russian drone in the midst of a major ongoing attack flying across the border and then blowing up in Romania. So, that's probably another story that the Russians come out with here in the near future. But I also got to say that for the president of Romania to conclude with some statements that sound pretty good, I've got to say that these amount to nothing more than political puffery and sales talk. There has been no action so far by the Republic of Romania that have even come close to the actions of other NATO states that have dealt with far less of a major incident as this. Estonia and Poland have declared Article 4 conventions several times in the past, each just because the drones flew into their country, or a Russian jet flew through their airspace for 2 minutes, or a Russian border guard, in his idiocy or deliberate act, walked across the border into Estonia, stayed there for a couple of minutes, and then walked back. All of those individual instances, which when you look at them compared to what happened in Galati, were insignificant in scale, had Article 4 conventions called for each and every one of them to have everyone talk about it at Brussels on what might be done next if such a thing happens or if it escalates. A bomb blew up on an apartment building, a Russian bomb in Galati, almost killing a couple of Romanians, and the Romanian government's response is to do nothing rather than put out some political feel-good statements at the national level, which I'd have to say is one of the weakest responses that I've ever seen so far, and not only that, to one of the most significant escalations that we've ever seen. Those Romanian citizens were literally feet away from getting killed. If that drone had gone anywhere just 2 feet or to the left or the right of where it blew up, it would have blown up in one of those apartments that was occupied at the time, and it would have killed the people inside of that apartment without a doubt. The only reason people didn't end up getting killed in this attack is because it blew up in the hallway corridor dividing the apartments, and nobody happened to be in the hallway when the drone hit and exploded, which was extremely lucky, because if anybody had been in that hallway, they would have died on the spot. Meaning that we wouldn't be dealing with a situation where there's just a couple of people wounded. They would have been dead, and that could have been a very likely reality of what's happened. And we're still seeing that NATO, its collective parts and its collective sums of the nation states that make up NATO, and NATO at large, is still incredibly lackluster and meek on its responses to clear Russian provocations and dangerous acts that are being conducted against their very own citizenry. So I'd have to say that I'm not really a big fan of this kind of stuff. I'm not a big fan, I gotta say, folks, I'm not a big fan of the United States showing weakness against the Russians, but I'm also not a fan of the NATO alliance collectively showing weakness against the Russians either, whether it be in American action or not. These sorts of instances by frontier states, like Romania, are ones that are going to entice Russia into forcing us into an armed conflict with them eventually, because something's going to end up becoming bad enough that we can't ignore it and we can't just pretend to do nothing about it like we're seeing Romania do right now. These frontier states are in a particularly important position. They have to respond significantly to any attack or any possible attack that the Russian Federation is conducting against them. If they do not, considering that they are the countries that will always be coming under target until a conventional war begins in full, they are only giving the Russians more breadth and leeway to conduct more actions of this type or to become more careless and incompetent in their activities around Ukraine to where attacks like these could continue and NATO citizens in a NATO state could end up getting killed in a future attack. And what do we do then? Where do we go from there? Do we say that those NATO citizens died and that's just what it is, and the Russians now have carte blanche to blow up any people that they want throughout Europe and will just generally ignore it? Where do we go from there? There has to be some form of a response to this to show the Russians that we will be ready for war if such a thing ever happens again. And so maybe they don't want to attack things inside of Ukraine that are directly along the border of a NATO state, because that might lead to unforeseen consequences for the Russian Federation that I have a feeling in reality they largely wish to avoid until the time of their choosing. We shouldn't be seeing that NATO citizens have to stay awake at night in constant fear in the border states, concerned that a Russian drone could blow them up and kill them in their sleep before they even get a chance to know what's going on. It's an outrageous sort of a concept, and not only that, it's a ridiculous sort of an idea to think that a nation does not owe it as an obligation to its citizens to protect them to the fullest extent and measures required, and to make any responses and statements to make it clear that the harm or death of their citizens is a red line that will never be crossed. Otherwise, God forbid, whatever is going to be happening to the Russians will certainly be worse. That's what I would have to say is my 2 cents. But moving us on out of that drone investigation, it is time for us to finally start getting on and into the major news from inside of Ukraine, because we have been able to see a lot of major developments in this area of the world today, without a shadow of a doubt. In the meantime, however, we did get to see that the fundraiser is already sitting at $1.8 thousand raised in 50 minutes, which is unbelievable.
That's very nice. Look at that. Very nice. I think that's about 75% of the way to the goal. If I do that if I can do that math in my head right there, that is very impressive to see that. It's only about 700 smackaroos away from hitting the goal right now. It's very quick progress.
Yeah, I would have to say that is unbelievable progress. Absolutely incredible. And I got to say, a humongous shout out to everybody who's been supporting this fundraiser tonight, because y'all have been getting this thing on towards the goal at lightning speed. It's a very fast growing fundraiser tonight. And I got to say that it's an unbelievable and amazing thing to know that the Lee Spring Army is continuing to soldier on and continuing to massively support these fundraisers so far into the coverage that we've been conducting here on the channel. We've been running this show for over 4 years at this point. That is around, if I believe I'm getting the number right, a little bit over 200 weeks, meaning that we've run about 200 fundraisers here on this channel over the history of its entire existence and continuous news coverage. And over the entirety of the channel's history, a single fundraiser has never missed the goal. And it's a huge testament and a fact of the incredible veracity of the Lee Spring Army and the humongous hearts that y'all have in y'all's continued support of the people that we cover around the world, whether they be US forces inside of the Middle East, whether they be firefighters in LA, or whether they be the Ukrainian nonprofits that we've supported for years. Y'all help to actually make a bit of a difference in all of those stories that we cover, and hopefully see that the situations that we cover are not as bad as they could have been if no one was supporting at all. So before we get on into the rest of our news, especially the huge news that came out of Ukraine today, which make sure to stick around, folks, because tonight is very big and good news for the war in Ukraine, and also on top of that, we have some absolutely hilarious clips that have come out as well today that we'll have to show y'all. But before we get into all that, Matthew, who are the top donors of this fundraiser so far tonight?
Okay, and also, by the way, before we get into that, by the way, I just want to point something out. I'm not sure if people have seen this or not, but we have an Iranian bot in the chat who's actually from Iran, who's in the chat right now. And I was noticing he was saying some things that seemed to be a little bit strangely in support of the Iranians, but he's pretending like he wasn't. I simply asked him one question. I said, would you denounce Mujtaba Khomeini? And he said, I don't know the guy. I was like, okay, that tells me everything I need to know right there. That's the one way. If you want to determine if somebody's a bot or not, simply ask them to denounce Mujtaba, because they won't do it, because they know that puts their life in jeopardy if they do something like that. The Iranian regime will come after them if they were to do something like that. Also, their boss probably wouldn't like that either, for the most part. So, that's pretty interesting right there, I will say. Also, by the way, this guy is apparently under a misunderstanding. We do not support the Iranians under any circumstance. I hope the Iranian regime that you apparently support comes crashing down sooner than later because, they butchered 40,000 of their own people, and that's what you're supporting. You're supporting the butchering of 40,000 innocent people. So keep supporting your guy, but eventually the U.S. will come around and justice will be served. But moving on to our top donors so far, we had a 1,000 from none other than Zebediah Carter, and a huge shout out to Zebediah for that massive single donation of the night right there. And we do appreciate that, and I know that Nova Ukraine appreciates that as well. We also had a 100 from none other than Hal Rose, and a huge shout out to Hal as well, and a 100 from Marcus W86, as well as a 75 from Old Warrior Fella, a 50 from Greg Carrier, and a 50 from Ryan Guy SR. And a huge shout out to all of our top donors thus far for helping us to reach over 70% of the way to the goal right now. Very nice to see. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say a humongous shout out to each and every single person, including those top donors, and especially Zebediah Carter, for y'all's amazing support over the course of the fundraiser at this point right now, about an hour in. Y'all have done unbelievable work tonight on getting this thing to where it is, and we are going to be very close to hitting the fundraiser goal, probably within, I would assume, the next 30 minutes, most likely, with how fast this thing has been moving. I've got to say that it's an honor and an absolute privilege to know that we get to run a show with so many amazing and kind-hearted people watching, because y'all help to support these fundraisers and actually make a difference on the news that we cover. Some channels cover the news, they make their pay, and that's the end of the day. This is one of the few channels that every single week, one day out of our 6-day streaming week, we all run and operate the fundraiser to be able to see that it gets to where it is and it's able to try and help out the folks that we're covering the news on. I don't really know of many other channels that do that. As a matter of fact, I don't think I know of any at the moment right now. And I've got to say that it's an amazing thing to know that the Lee Spring Army has continued the momentum and the zeal for these fundraisers for over 4 years, and will continue them most likely until the very last days of this channel, which, when that will happen, whoever knows. But beyond that, a humongous thanks to every single one of y'all, the folks we were able to shout out and the folks we weren't able to shout out once again. And with that in mind, before we get into this news, let's get 3 questions from the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And also in the meantime, if y'all have a live chat question for us, tag at It's Enforcer Matt in the live chat and put your question behind it. Right now I have just about 5 questions. Well, we will definitely need some more before the night's out. Also, by the way, a big shout out to Chef Danny B, by the way. He put in a 50 to the fundraiser. Also, a big shout out to Chef Danny as well for supporting the fundraiser. And our first question here is going to go to none other than Eric, who said, did you guys cover a story on China building missile pads and bunkers, and it was seen on satellite?
I don't believe we have that story up in the rotation tonight. Generally, we don't cover a lot of the developments that come out of China because they're fairly low-key, and generally the developments happen over such a slow span because most of it's just defense construction and projects and such things like that, that it's really hard to give them any momentum to cover, like daily news of an armed conflict that's unfolding or diplomatic developments inside the Middle East. So generally, we didn't have that in our news coverage tonight, but it's not unexpected or unheard of. From what I already know, the Chinese have slowly been working over the past few years on implementing a new limited deterrence doctrine rather than the nuclear doctrine that they've had of the past, which is entirely defensive, meaning that they would never justify the use of nuclear weapons unless if there was a pure existential threat to the People's Republic of China and the nation was quite literally collapsing, and then they'd be used. Now they're starting to extend it to limited deterrence, which includes some more lax terms, kind of along the lines of what we have, which is full-blown nuclear deterrence, to where if U.S. interests are even threatened and it appears to be an existential threat, then nuclear weapons could be used. But China's starting to move towards, if there's any sort of an existential threat that exists within anywhere around their waters and whatnot, they could use tactical nuclear weapons, which is starting to move on closer to the normal deterrence that countries like the Russian Federation and the United States have. But outside of that, I wouldn't be able to talk about that particular story because I don't think I heard about that much today, and I also don't have it in our news coverage for the day as well. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we're on to the second question of the segment.
We also have a $10 super chat from JB Najalki, and thank you very much, JB, for that $10 super chat. We do appreciate that. He said, it won't allow me to donate to the fundraiser for some reason, so I'll chuck it to you guys for the absolutely legendary job you do, bringing us the best news on YouTube, and thank you, and LSA.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support and the kind words, JB Najalki. I also hate to know that Australians still can't support the fundraisers. It's something about y'all's nation's laws. I'm not particularly sure how the laws are working down there in Australia, and I believe New Zealand as well. But apparently, it's not supported or legal for some reason for y'all to donate to the YouTube fundraisers, because the entire time that we've run these, none of our viewers from Australia or New Zealand have been able to directly donate to them because of some sort of national restrictions that you'll have on that, which unfortunately, I just still don't really know why that's the case or why that law exists, but apparently it does, and YouTube doesn't allow y'all to support, which is very unfortunate. But I do have to say a huge thanks to you for enjoying this channel and supporting the channel, because folks like you have been around for a really long time. Like, I remember your name being in the chat for years now, about as long as my memory goes back on running the channel, which is basically back to its opening days. And I remember you being in the chat for an incredibly long period of that time. And I got to thank you for still being around and enjoying this channel and supporting it, because folks like you helped make this thing possible, even on a Sunday fundraiser night. And I thank you so much for enjoying us bringing you the news each and every day, along with the millions of people who watch the Enforcer channel every single month. To actually tell you all, because I find this kind of stuff really interesting, at the end of this month, and y'all wouldn't believe this is actually considered a low viewership month these days, according to YouTube, compared to our average, but over the course of the entire month, we had 6.6 million people watch the show, which is absolutely insane. Normally these days, YouTube says that we get an average viewership somewhere in the ballpark of about 8 to 10 million a month, so this was a little bit below the normal, but I'd have to say, folks, that 6.5 million people watching in a month is still unbelievable, and we're absolutely honored to know that so many people have been enjoying the channel over the past few months, and we've been seeing viewership that we've never seen before in channel history. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again, JB Najalki, for being one of those folks and being with us for so long, and following the Lee Spring Army as it starts to rise into being a fairly large group, larger than I ever believed it would ever get. But with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news that we have from the war in Ukraine.
All right, so this one's going to go to none other than my lady Lily, who said, what is the difference between a regular and a tactical nuclear weapon?
That's a great question. So generally, it's the size of the nuclear explosive or the nuclear yield of the bomb, which is usually measured, I believe, in megatons, and it's also the delivery system as well. Generally, tactical nuclear weapons are either fired on a short-range ballistic missile, or they are dropped as a normal bomb would be. To show y'all one of these, let me show y'all a B-61, because this is the standard one that we have in the United States. But this is the general ubiquitous tactical nuclear weapon that we have in the United States of America these days. It's that bomb right there. And a lot of people would look at that and go, that looks very unassuming. And it is very unassuming. It doesn't have an incredibly large yield. It's a fairly small nuclear bomb, at least compared to the strategic ones. And also, it doesn't really have a long-range delivery system, like, say, launching this thing from the, Nebraska, and it's able to hit Vladivostok in about 30 minutes. This thing has to be flown in an aircraft or on an aircraft to the front. And then they do this thing called lobbing the shot for the larger part, which is where they open up the bomb bay, they start pulling up into a bit of a climb, and then they release the bomb in that climb, which basically lobs the bomb, kind of like you're throwing it with your arm, towards the target and allows it to get a greater range, meaning that the aircraft won't be on top of the bomb when it explodes, right underneath, and also it allows for the aircraft to not be subjected to anti-aircraft fire in the midst of trying to deploy and drop the bomb on enemy forces. The other one, generally at least in the U.S. arsenal, would be something like the Trident ICBM. And let me show you this one here, because this one's actually submarine fired, but this is one of our intercontinental ballistic missiles. All intercontinental ballistic missiles work the same. They have something called a MIRV on board, which is a multiple independent reentry vehicle system that's mounted to the top of the missile in the nose cone. What this thing is basically, it's basically a bomb rack. It's a circular disc that holds a whole bunch of cone-shaped warheads, and these travel on the rocket into a suborbital trajectory. Once it gets to a certain point called the mid-course phase, or largely getting more towards the end of the mid-course and towards the terminal phase, which is where it gets close to impact, the MIRV actually independently moves and then starts to release the warheads so that way they can hit specific targets either in a localized area or over a broader area, meaning that one of these weapons can actually hit about, at least I think in normal practice, 5 to 7 different locations with the 5 to 7 warheads that each missile has on board. And the explosive size of the warheads on this missile versus the tactical nuclear bomb are far larger. The tactical nuclear bomb could take out a medium-sized to a small-sized city in a normal environment. A warhead on a usual ICBM can wipe out pretty much a large city in one go with one warhead, meaning that you could wipe out about 7 to 8 cities with a single one of these ICBMs. So that's really the giant difference between a tactical nuclear weapon and a strategic nuclear weapon, and usually a lot of people don't know about this. This is actually an interesting rabbit hole. I see a lot of people are getting really fascinated about this, like, wow, I didn't know any of this stuff. Yeah, that's actually the difference, and that's why there's actually an escalatory ladder even to using nuclear weapons. Because a lot of people in the public, they always think that nuclear weapons usage means that the whole world ends tomorrow as soon as one is used. Because everybody has the image that it's going to be these giant missiles that are the first thing to fly, and everyone's basically going to die within minutes. The reality of it is that the first nuclear weapon that's going to be used is going to be a small little bomb like this, getting dropped on some army group somewhere in Eastern Europe, and that would be the start of a nuclear war. But apparently we have breaking news coming out at this moment right at the end of our question segment. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so this is very fresh. It's so fresh, there's really no post hardly at all on Twitter about it, but I am checking some other channels on Telegram, etc. Allegedly, Kuwait is under attack. There are air raid sirens currently going off in Kuwait, and I'm trying to get some video evidence of that so we can show it here on the air, but apparently there is some sort of attack that just started, literally probably 30 seconds ago, inside of Kuwait. So, not exactly sure what's being targeted. We did see, of course, just a couple of days ago that the Ali Al Salem Air Base, which houses U.S. forces inside of Kuwait, was attacked by the Iranians, and apparently some U.S. service members got injured, and the U.S. military tried to cover that up. But we found out later what had really happened, and also some drones apparently got injured or damaged, is more a proper term for that, on the airstrip down there. So it sounds like Kuwait's the target of an attack yet again. So waiting for information to come out, but we could be seeing that Iran has launched yet another one.
We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, we don't hear that the Ali Al Salim Air Base or any other U.S. forces suffer another direct hit like we heard the last time from this Iranian missile that might have been fired at Kuwait. We're not entirely sure, but we do hear that air raid sirens are sounding, and we'll most likely start to probably get information soon, if that is the case, of air raid alert messages being issued throughout the Kingdom of Kuwait, also confirming that there is an air defense scenario unfolding.
So we do see that the phone alerts are going out to people. We do have that right now. We can show you all this. This is the exact same alert that went out when Ali Salim was attacked last time. So it's very generic. It does not state the location in which the threat's emanating from. It simply tells everybody inside of Kuwait to take shelter, stay away from windows, and to ensure public safety. So it's very generic, but they are confirming there is imminent danger, and we can now confirm for a certainty that air raid sirens are definitely going off inside of that area. So we'll be watching that closely to see exactly what the target is.
And we will have to definitely keep an eye on this one, folks. It sounds like a rapidly developing situation over Kuwait. And once again, we'll have to, like usual these days, kind of make some basic deductions and assumptions at some points to be able to try and fill in some informational gaps that may exist. But as we've seen in prior times, our general analysis has usually been more than 90% correct most of the time. So we'll be taking that as, decent assumptions if we have to make them during this developing story. But moving us on out of our question segment, and a big shout out to everyone who's thrown in a question tonight. Amazingly good questions. And also, folks, tonight is the Sunday night fundraiser. You do not have to throw in a super chat to have a question answered, because we basically have no super chats tonight. So if you want to, just address @It'sEnforcerMatt at the beginning of your question so that way Matthew can see it, and then ask your question, type it in after that, press enter in the live chat so that way Matthew can collect them and put them in the spreadsheet, so that way we can have a lot of good questions to answer later, because there's some great ones tonight, and I want to make sure that we have really good ones like that to answer once we get through with the rest of the Ukraine war news and the breaking news now unfolding right now. But moving us on.
Oh, we have some more breaking news actually right now. So the Kuwait Army has just posted, as of 30 seconds ago, a notice right here. They've given some details, very vague details, I will admit. They are saying that the Kuwaiti air defenses are currently confronting hostile missile and drone attacks, And that's all they're saying right now. So they're saying missiles and drones again. So that is the exact same wordage that was used the last time we saw Ali Salim get attacked, the air base inside of Kuwait where U.S. forces are housed. So I would say a very high likelihood that that air base is likely the target of this attack once again. Obviously, Kuwait's not a very big country, so it'll take a minute to find out exactly what has been hit. But apparently, missiles and drones are coming into Kuwait, so very ominous.
We can also confirm, at least to the moment, that there certainly is an air threat over the area. By checking Flight Radar 24, we can see that Kuwait Airways Flight 342 and Kuwait Airways Flight 284 have both been put into holding patterns or apparently have been diverted from near final approach to the runway at the Kuwait International Airport, most likely due to the airspace being temporarily closed due to the incoming threat. If this is a similar sort of a threat pattern to the last attacks that we've seen, this might be a fairly small one, either comprised of a couple of ballistic missiles and drones, and this might be the only attack wave of its type during the incident. So it certainly does appear, by everything that we can tell by flight radar, that the airport is diverting aircraft from the area, meaning that there certainly is an incoming missile and drone attack that is unfolding right now live on air. Otherwise, we would see that these aircraft would start getting vectored back towards the airport and back towards their final approaches on the runways at Kuwait City. So we'll be waiting to get more information. I actually have a feeling that by the time I'm about to say moving on, we'll probably have some more here. So I'm kind of like trying to like pad the time. Do we have more?
Yeah, we do have some more. So I'm seeing from Iranian sources, the Iranian sources on the ground in mainland Iran are claiming that there's been at least one launch from the Khuzestan area, which is also, I believe that's the exact same launch point of the last attack on Kuwait. So this is almost essentially 99% analogous to the last attack we saw 2 days ago conducted on Ali Salim. So it's starting to look very, very likely that Ali Salim's once again being targeted, which would be obviously an attack on U.S. forces for the second time in less than a matter of days. So that's quite bad to hear that. So apparently, can you give us a location in the Khuzestan area? Can you show us exactly where that is so people can get a gist of it?
Yeah, so the Khuzestan area is the province with a Vaj in it. It also has the cities of Dezful and others. Let me see if I can just type it in really quickly. Khuzestan province. So this is the regional outline of Khuzestan. So this is quite literally just on the northern end of the very northern part of the Persian Gulf, just north of Kuwait. So very short range distance from the launch point to the impact site, wherever that may be in Kuwait.
Interesting. Also, by the way, apparently we have a couple of viewers from Kuwait in the live chat. Also, I've gotten a couple of messages from folks who are in Kuwait. They're claiming, it seems to be a common thread amongst all the people that are telling me this information right now, that most people are seeing puffs of smoke from their apartment buildings, and that would seem to line up with air interceptions. We did see that the last time that Kuwait was attacked. We saw these puffs of smoke in the sky. I'm not really sure exactly what time it is in Kuwait right now. I think it might be possibly the early morning hours right now, I think. But they're seeing puffs of smoke, which could indicate that interceptions have taken place, or it could mean that possibly there's been hits on the ground. That's just kind of hard to tell right now, but it sounds like they're intercepting, which is a good initial sign that it's not crazily out of control, but it depends on how big this attack turns out to be.
So it appears, at least according to what we're seeing right here, that local time, it's 6:12 a.m. in the morning right now in Kuwait, and according to Flight Radar 24 and the sunlight map, it appears that this is well within daylight hours, so these puffs of smoke would be visible to eyewitnesses on the ground right now in Kuwait City of the air defenses, apparently attempting to hit or hitting targets in the air and exploding near to them, which was what the visible puffs of white smoke would be. So actually, folks, really quickly, we're not going to be moving on to the Ukraine war for a brief moment. We're actually going to be sticking on this because we're going to be getting probably a decent amount of updates here for the next several minutes on what's going on. We can confirm that that apparently whatever threats exist, they have made it over the territory of Kuwait, over the land area of the holdings of the Kingdom of Kuwait, because people on the ground are reporting the puffs of smoke in the air, which is showing that air defenses are either impacting the missiles or they're overshooting or undershooting and proximity fusing near to the incoming missile, and that's why we're seeing the puff of smoke. So whatever is happening right now, I'd actually assume that either the missiles have been shot down or they have made it to impacting their target at this point while we're on air right now. But we're trying to make sure to get some additional information to figure out how accurate that is and what really is happening at this point.
Okay, so I have gotten some confirmation, some initial confirmation here from one of the Kuwait state media agencies that Kuwaiti's Air Force is currently intercepting missiles right now. So that's apparently, for all the Kuwaiti viewers in the live chat right now, that is apparently the puffs of smoke you're seeing, which seems to line up with my analysis as well. You're seeing air interceptions of missiles and possibly drones as well over your skies right now. So that's what's taking place. So that is a good sign, at least. At least most of these incoming projectiles are being taken out of the sky before they're able to make impact. But of course, there's always a debris risk. Depending on where it was shot at, it could fall on a base, it could fall on a residential area. There's still a pretty big risk, even if it is shot down. Because Kuwait's not a very large country. It's very small and very compact. But that's what we're hearing right now. Some more confirmation of that. I'm trying to scan my sources here while I'm talking to see if I can find other information about this. Right now, I do have our first image of one of the interceptions, by the way. You can go ahead and show that to the people right now. It's an image out of Kuwait. It's near the Ali Salim Air Base, by the way, so that appears to be once again the target. It appears we were dead on the money, saying that that was the secondary target this time around. So, Enforcer, what say you?
It does appear that the Ali Al Salim Air Base is under attack once more. I gotta say, folks, that Ali Al Salim kind of sounds like a bit of a joke, but outside of that, it does appear that the Ali Al Salim Air Base is under attack again. Air defense fire is being reported in the skies over the area, so we generally assume that this air defense smoke in the air is being seen either over Al Jafra or just west of Al Jafra. We're not exactly sure yet, but that's where we saw the puffs of smoke from air defense activity last time, and we generally assume that this attack is almost identical to the last attack, considering that all of the other elements pertaining to the launch site, the possible target, the air defense warnings, and the air defense activity is almost identical to the last attack that we saw just several days ago, which the United States largely brushed under the rug and ignored, although it did lead to the wounding of several U.S. service members and the loss of an MQ-9 Reaper on the ground. We actually have more breaking news coming out at this moment on this attack that's happening right now.
Okay, so in addition to the attack in Kuwait, we are hearing that apparently northern Israel is under a pretty decent sized rocket attack again. We have been seeing this over the last 12 hours, pretty much nonstop, and it looks like Hezbollah is launching yet another volley of rockets in northern Israel. The situation between the Lebanese Hezbollah forces and the Israeli forces is really starting to ramp up quite a lot over the last 12 hours, and we're seeing an extension of that right here. So that's happening in the midst of the Kuwait attack that Iran's conducting right now. So it does not appear like things are calm, to say the least. Also, we can't help but mention that the last time that Iran struck Kuwait, they hit and apparently injured some service members of the United States military, and that largely went ignored to a large degree. So now they're trying to do it again. So what's that tell us about talks? That tells us it's not going very good, to say the least, and probably there's no deal close at all. So that's not a good sign right there. But Enforcer, I'm going to keep scanning for some more breaking news right now, so I'm going to let you take back over.
And so we will be waiting to see what more breaking news we get at this moment, but we can largely see that this is now the second attack in 72 hours that has been conducted against the U.S. forces based at the Ali Al Salim Air Base inside the Kingdom of Kuwait. We're trying to get further information in the moment right now, but to give you all some of the facts that we do know of the situation in the moment, it appears to have been a combined drone and missile attack, with most of the launch sites being seen within the Khuzestan province of southwestern Iran, which is just several dozen miles north of Kuwait on the just opposite end of the Persian Gulf and right across the Iraqi border. We've also seen that the Kuwaiti Ministry of Defense has confirmed that there are drones and missiles in the air that they are defending against, and puffs of explosions of air defense fire have been seen over the area, most likely of Al Jafra, as the reports of the explosions in the sky were seen around the area leading up to the Ali Al Salim Air Base. This means that the Iranians are attempting to attack and cause damage to U.S. forces at the airbase, which can only be taken as a deliberate action to try and force the restart of the conflict. There is no other real way to look at that, at least at the moment, because the Islamic Republic of Iran has done the same thing twice in 72 hours. Attacking and trying to wound and kill U.S. service members generally is considered by most people with brains to be an act of war. And so the fact that the Iranians have now done this twice over, I'd have to say that I think the Iranians at this point are trying to restart the war with the United States of America, but still largely put the ball in the U.S.'s court to respond or make the United States lose face by not responding to each of these attacks that are occurring. So we'll have to see what more we get out of this. And Matthew, do we have anything else coming out at this moment right now?
Okay, so I'm seeing more reports of flights being diverted from the international airport. Can you take a look there and see how many flights have been diverted so far, and also see if the airport is reporting any disruption activity? Let's see here. It seems like they never really report disruptions. You're looking at it right here on the flight radar dashboard, and they're not showing disruptions. But clearly, though, they're diverting flights from the area because I'm seeing them being diverted apparently just as a matter of minutes ago. I'm not sure if some of them have turned their transponders off or not, because I did see on the images here that are coming out, there appears to be more flights being diverted that are being shown right now on the live view on flight radar. So maybe they turn off their transponder for safety, possibly to avoid being targeted. I'm not really sure if that's normal, but we can definitely confirm that there are diversions.
Well, we see this flight right here is actually being grounded right now, and it appears that it is still at the ramp, not even getting close to getting an approval for a runway takeoff at the moment. And we've also seen that additionally, Kuwait Air 284 and 342 are currently in holding patterns right now in the Persian Gulf, awaiting clearance to land in Kuwait, as they are all preparing to get ready to land in Kuwait City. So it appears that the attack is still ongoing at this point. We might be seeing that other flights are being diverted, but I'm currently not seeing more than 2 in the air right now, at least over the Persian Gulf, that have been diverted, at least at the moment right now. So hopefully we'll be able to hear or see some developments on where the other Kuwaiti aircraft that have been diverted are at the moment.
So in the midst of this happening, CENTCOM just released a statement, apparently not about the current attack in Kuwait, but they've dropped a bombshell on us right now about some new strikes that they conducted on Iran, apparently. So go grab this real quick and let's read this to the people. I haven't had a chance to look at it myself yet, so let's read it off and take a first look at it.
All right, and so here is the statement that we have just gotten from U.S. Central Command, which we're going to read directly from their statement. U.S. Central Command conducted self-defense strikes on Iranian radar and command and control sites for drones in Guruk, Iran, and Qashem Island this weekend. The measured and deliberate strikes occurred on Saturday and Sunday in response to aggressive Iranian actions that included the shoot-down of a U.S. MQ-1 drone that was operating over international waters. U.S. fighter aircraft swiftly responded by eliminating Iranian air defenses, a ground control station, and 2 one-way attack drones that posed clear threats to ships transiting regional waters. No American service members were harmed. Heavy asterisk on that. We don't know. CENTCOM will continue to protect U.S. assets and interests in response to unwarranted Iranian aggression during the ongoing ceasefire. So it does appear that CENTCOM is giving a statement, at least at the moment right now, that there has been strikes that were conducted, I'm supposing yesterday, by the U.S. Armed Forces against the Islamic Republic of Iran within the area of the island of Qashem and generally within the Strait of Hormuz. And this also confirms, finally does confirm, that a U.S. MQ-1 drone was shot down, which we had already reported as fact after seeing the debris field on Qashem Island. Also, Matthew, this is giving us the answer as to why that Iranian lieutenant was killed on Qashem Island. He was killed in an airstrike.
Yeah, that might actually explain it right there. Also, oddly enough, the Iranians described that as a gas leak that led to the death of one of these people, which obviously that's Iranian code words for there was an assassination that took place. The gas leak story never really adds up. We saw the like hundreds of gas leaks right before the war started, and that was targeted assassinations by the Israeli agents on the ground on these top Iranian officials. So that's probably what their excuse is this time, is for this same assassination.
I would assume so. I would have to say it probably is definitely, without a doubt, some airstrikes and assassination attempts that are being conducted in the area. And it does appear that CENTCOM has finally confirmed that they did conduct armed action against the Iranians, I'm assuming yesterday, because we were reporting all of this yesterday of the air defenses over Qashem, the drone wreckage, and also the Iranian officer that was killed by shrapnel, along with a couple of other developments that we had seen in the area. So clearly showing us once again that the U.S. did conduct strikes yesterday, and it now appears that's the reason why that Iranian lieutenant was killed, which we really didn't have a whole lot of information on at the moment that it happened. So we actually have more breaking news coming out right now. So Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we've gotten a video here. Also, by the way, ignore the date on that post right there. That's a translation error. It happened this morning, just a couple of minutes ago. We're getting our first video here, apparently showing the Iranians launching a missile towards Kuwait from southwestern Iran. This is from apparently Khuzestan, which is what we heard earlier. And let's take a look at the video.
And there's the missile on its way. Very weird editing there. But that's the end of the clip. Very short, but it does show us the launch, and it does appear that that sort of a terrain, at least a little bit of it we could see, generally does line up with this more fertile valley area around Avaj and Khuzestan, meaning that they probably filmed it somewhere around the city of Avaj, meaning that the launch point was a little bit north of the city somewhere. That also means, if we were to actually, when you think about it, if the launch trajectory was north of Avaj and we measured a straight line, because it's a ballistic missile, to Ali al-Salim, that would just be a little bit west of Al Jafra, and the air defense fire would be visible from Al Jafra, where the pictures are being taken right now. So that generally lines up.
Yeah, I think this right here might be retaliation for the strikes that the U.S. conducted that they just made an announcement about. I think Iran might be retaliating to that, and this could be the retaliation we're looking at, because notice that these strikes right here started at 0600 local time for the area, and then CENTCOM 15 minutes later ended up releasing their statement about the strikes on Iran, apparently. So this could be the retaliation possibly that we're looking at, but it's a little bit of a weak argument, though, because we did see Iran, of course, hit Kuwait just a couple of days back as well, which was before these alleged strikes took place. So we'll have to see here, but honestly, it seems like the war has basically restarted. It's just being kept very secretive right now. Like the U.S. is pretending like, oh, well, the ceasefire is still in place, even though they're striking Iran, and Iran's retaliating, and they're acting like, well, we're still talking. It's a really strange situation.
Yeah, it is an incredibly weird one, and we'll have to try and see what goes on in the future with it. But I think at the moment, folks, this news is going to be dying down because the missile either was shot down or, it ended up blowing up on Ali al-Salim again, and we'll find out about that in a couple of days. So we'll figure it out. But I have a feeling, folks, chances are very high, because I was right on this the last time, folks, if y'all noticed, is that the U.S. is going to act like this didn't happen, and they're going to downplay it a whole lot, and they're going to say the ceasefire is basically still in effect, because that's what they did the last time this happened, even with us losing a drone on the airbase, and also a couple of service members being wounded in the process. But moving us on, finally, out of the Middle East, it's now time for us to move on up into Ukraine and the war, which we've seen a lot of today, and a humongous amount of big news coming out from behind the lines. The situation is bad, fuel shortage-wise, in the southern front, and it's gotten so bad, Russians are going into unmitigated panic on the internet. The ghost of Novorossiya, who has 145,000 subscribers on Telegram, notice that they're still talking on Telegram, by the way. The Russians apparently have not been able to crack down on this good enough, but they put out the statement today. By the way, the Ghost of Novorossiya sort of people, they're down in these occupied areas like Crimea, or they're around the southern parts of Russia. But they stated, there's a fuel shortage in Crimea, and it's not because Russia has run out of gasoline, which they are, but because the enemy has destroyed the fuel storage infrastructure. That is, we can import fuel to the peninsula, but there's simply nowhere to store the stuff. All enemy actions involving strikes against Russian energy sectors are systematic, and the pace of such strikes is only increasing. In the context of modern drone warfare, the only way to truly counter all of this is to move all infrastructure underground as much as possible. So it looks like they're freaking out to the point they're saying they need to start digging underground and building gasoline bunkers to store the fuel in, which is kind of a little bit of an extreme measure and really expensive, and I don't think that's doable in the current war. We're also hearing that they're now starting to panic because apparently the Ukrainians are attaching drones to balloons, which we did see this delivery system before shown as a demonstration of how the system works, but apparently they floated a couple of these down into Crimea, and the Russians are now reporting that there are balloon-dropped drone attacks happening on the E97 highway south of Dzhankoy in Crimea. So right now there's balloons apparently hovering over Crimea in the eastern area of the peninsula, and they're just intermittently dropping drones off of the bottom of these balloons and then just letting them glide on down to a target on the highway and blow it up. So now the Ukrainians are causing hell way back here, way back in Crimea. Now even here, the highways and supply lines are being ripped apart by Ukrainian drones because of this new balloon drop drone strategy that they're starting to use. The situation is starting to become so extreme that the Russians are now finally issuing legitimate fuel vouchers, here they are, to the citizens of Crimea. This allows...
Oh man, they're handing out the gift cards.
This allows for 20 liters of gas, which is about 4 to 5 gallons of gas per purchase per a certain period of time. Apparently, Man, real. Like, bro, that honestly scared the shit out of me, man. Like, I was like, what the hell? Bro,
Man, I had to put it on them, man. I had to because you know the Russians down there in Crimea on their vacation in illegally occupied territory, having to now basically get stuck there. It's a permanent vacation at this point because they can't even get gas to get back home, and now they're sitting here with like fake-looking gift cards for gasoline. Kind of a strange situation.
Man, they check in, but they don't check out. Man, like, it's a sad thing for them. And according to what we have been able to hear, just to show you all the line of people waiting for gas at one station, apparently there will be restrictions of 20 liters on the sales of octane 92 and 95 petrol to residents. Priority will only be given to emergency, military, and essential services, and authorities claim that this will only be for 30 days until the supplies normalize. It's just a temporary thing. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it, folks. It's nothing bad. It's nothing bad at all. It's just a temporary disturbance. Everything will be fine soon. But I have to tell you that the lines at the gas stations would be leaving you to think otherwise.
Ну вот и очередь у нас на бензин. Ошалеть.
Oh, this guy's got some of that music. We're going to be muting that. Like, it's like, okay.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. Look at this. This is what that depression looks like right here. That Russian depression. Look at this. Even if you have your, also look at that. The van with the Z on the back, by the way. Look, the Z supporters, the one supporting the war right there. Look, here goes the van right here with the Z on the back. Look at this. Look at what this brings you, Russian people. Don't support the war. It brings you nothing but trouble. You could have gone on vacation and had gasoline, but because you support the war, because you put the Z on the back like you're a barn car, now you're in the dumps.
Man, this blood thought they was going to be winning on the front line in 3 days. 3 years later, they in the bread line. How things turning?
You know what Z stands for? It stands for zilch. They ain't getting no gas from the gas station. Zilch.
Man, they said, please hear our cries, Putin. We are suffering. Meanwhile, Putin, sleeping like a baby. That's what the Z is for. The Russian government be sleeping on their suffering.
I tell you what, they are suffering. And even if they have that gas voucher, it still might not do them any good because you got to find a gas station with gas to even use the voucher, which is kind of hard to do at the moment.
Oh, and if you find the gas station with gas, this is the kind of line you're contending with.
That's some mountainous terrain right there. Look at that. Oh, look at this. Look, he's only got. Oh, he's still got some gas left. What's he doing waiting in the gas line for?
I think he's just trying to make sure he's okay. Man, a lot of these people are like zooming by, man. Like, it's like, dang. It's like, is there a speed limit around here? Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Oh, they're not even lined up for this gas station. This gas station only has diesel at $1 a liter.
$1 a liter? That's kind of crazy.
That's pretty bad. Like, honestly, damn. For the Russians, at least, someone from Britain's about to say, you two think that's bad? Well, we spend £8 a liter, but this is Russia. They're broke ass poor. Like, y'all got money. So $1 a liter in Russia is pretty damn bad for them. But we can see that the line isn't even for that gas station. It's for the next one out around the corner, Blit. Good Lord, where's it stop?
It's tough. It's tough to be a Russian, I tell you. Oh, look, here they are piling into this one.
And they're all in line for only 95 octane. Not 92. They don't even have 92. All these people are just trying to get 95 octane. So there's other lines somewhere else in the area just trying to get 92. So
what's the price on the board? What's it say for the regular gas? What's the price?
83 rubles and 80 cents or whatever the hell they call it. So that's
per liter?
Yeah. So that's like 83 cents a liter.
Let's see here. Let me do some quick math. Like, go ahead and stall. I'll have it here in just a second.
Oh, sure. So we can stall? Of course we can. I would say, folks, that's probably going to be ballparking at about $4 a gallon, probably. But I'm sure that Matthew's about to get us the real number here soon, the precise one, and it's probably going to be a little bit below that.
So that's about $4.43 per gallon.
On go?
Yeah, it's about $4.43 a gallon.
Damn, they paying American prices. Like on a poverty budget. Oh my God. Dude, that's unreal. Oh my Lord. That's insane, honestly. Like that's pretty bad.
Yeah, If you translate that in context of the Russian average salary, in context of that gasoline price, that's about 3 times more when you put it in context of their salary than what we're paying per gallon here in the United States.
Well, in reality, I think they make 4 times less. I think the median income in the United States these days is like 60,000 US dollars, and their median income is like 12 to 15 or so. So I think that's about 4 times less. So if you took that $4.30 a gallon, $4.30 a gallon to us is like the price per gallon being like $16 per gallon for them on the income that the average Russian makes. So this is like going out to the gas station and literally getting ripped off blindly. Like, this isn't even as bad as what we're getting ripped off in America on these days. This is worse for them because they don't make as much. But you know, as the famous Tucky G said, at least the groceries are cheap. Am I right or am I wrong? Moving us on out of that whole deal, we also got to see that outside of this little area in Crimea, things weren't really going well over the rest of Russia either. There were significant drone attacks that were conducted today on top of yesterday's drone attacks, and we got to see a little bit of these clips of the drones flying by. Oh, there are these! Bro, they turn off their lights.
It's a flyby! It's a flyby shooting, Blair! Take cover!
Man, suka! Oh, here's another.
That sounds like a semi-truck.
Yeah, bro.
You know when the semi trucks hit that Jake brake and they're going down the hill and it goes.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
kind of sounds like that a little bit.
Yeah, just a little more high pitched. Honestly, it sounds almost just like it. We also got to see some Russians trying to shoot the drones down. Observe.
Вот он!
Shoot it down, блядь! Oh God!
Oh my God! This guy's getting his shit rocked right now, bro. Man, he's in literally the like the shockwave cloud at the front of the muzzle. This dude's like standing dangerously close.
Bruh, yeah, everyone else is using machine gun. Meanwhile, let me man, everybody else is using the machine gun and some shit out here to try and shoot down this drone. Meanwhile, Blood out here whipping out the Draco and then shooting that.
Man, he's getting the lead dust and everything in his face standing that close to it. Let's see that again, man. That's pure crazy, man. It's like the second guy opened up and he's literally right next to him.
And they missed it
Man,
all.
He's just sitting there rattling. Oh my God.
Bro, this thing's got that like Battlefield or Call of Duty like climb rate of like their light machine guns in the game where this guy's firing, he just goes into the sky in like 5 shots. That is this. I've never seen a POV like this in my life of someone shooting a rifle in this war, and it looks like a cartoon. Like, look at this. And they're missing the hell out of this thing. Like, none of it hit. None of this hit. Oh yeah, there's another one coming. Plus, I'll whip out that cartoon Draco again. Hit him with the Draco.
Damn.
Oh, look at that.
Oh my God.
This guy's literally not leading the target the whole damn time. Look, dude, the rounds are literally falling short of the drone at the same distance the whole time the other dude's firing in the clip. Watch. Oh my God, it's freaking comical.
Yeah, it's literally following the trail, the flight path of the drone. That's lacking common sense severely.
Dude, these dumbasses in the mobile fire groups are literally aiming their iron sights right onto the drone and firing at it with the iron sights right on it. They're not even leading the target at all. Like, that's why all the rounds are falling short at the same distance, is because they're literally keeping the iron sights right on the drone and shooting at it. And because of that, obviously, all of the rounds are falling short at the same distance the whole damn time. That's unbelievable to think that they're that poorly trained and they don't think at all.
Oh, yeah, that's what 2 weeks of very pitiful, poor training gets you. Is people honestly, man, you don't really like if you have basic intelligence, you really don't need training for this kind of common sense stuff like that. Like if you clearly are following the drone with your tracer fire and it's literally trailing the drone, then how about you lower the muzzle down a little bit to hit in front of it? It's like that's just common sense. Like if you have to be told that, you're already in foul shape.
Man, I heard that they have clay shooting ranges in the Russian Federation, where you go and shoot the clays down with the shotguns. I've heard that nobody in Russia has hit one of those a single time, and they're still trying to figure out why that's the case. Because they're always aiming right at it, and for some reason they're always missing, weirdly enough.
Yeah, it's insane. Ukraine doesn't have this problem though. They can use these mobile fire groups and actually take stuff down, but the Russians definitely can't.
Man, I mean, man, the mental power of a Russian mobile fire group is very low, but the firepower side is very high, though.
Давай, давай, давай! Давайте шейте этого пидора!
Well, they're shocked, man. How much money was that in tracers right there? Those tracers are expensive. It's like they just wasted a
Thousands.
hell of a lot of ammo right there. They just wasted it.
Thousands of dollars were just wasted in that ammunition, probably. Like, I would, it's unbelievable. Like, it's unbelievable, really. But moving us on out of that, we also got to see that some of these drones did hit their mark around the town of Lazarevo in the area of the Kirov Oblast, which famously has a cruiser named after it. But here are some of the clips of this major fire that happened today. Wow, this guy's got the arson bone in his body, man. He went, like he saw this and just started drooling.
Focus.
Oh, he knows English.
Bro, look at this. He zoomed in on the nearest object, which was a pine needle, to focus in his camera.
Oh, wait a minute. I think, did we? Hal Rose just threw in the 300. We hit the goal! Hey! Igor Blue!
That's crazy work right there. A huge shout to Hal Rose for helping us to get over that goal right there. We are now at 2,700 smackaroos raised while we watch the Russians fail. The LSA pulled through for Ukraine yet again. I tell you, folks, I'm sure y'all are tired of winning. It's just you're winning so much, you can't handle it anymore. It's making you sick to your stomach to win this much. But you're going to have to just take some Pepto or something because we're winning. We're winning again.
We're winning so well here in the Lee Spring Army. We hit another fundraiser goal again, and we're already at 2.7 thousand raised. Unbelievable. Unreal. And I gotta say, a humongous shout out to everyone who supported this fundraiser night, especially Hal Rose that just threw in the 333 that got us over the top. Because y'all have made it possible again for the Lee Spring Army to say that it's never missed a fundraiser goal and that will never truly die. Getting us back into this clip.
Ой, блядь.
This is kind of peaceful out here. Man, what a roaring fire. And do I hear that, folks? Do I hear the fire, the roaring fire of growing breaking news? I think I do. What do we got, Matthew?
So we have some breaking news right now. Iran has apparently just released a statement. We're going to jump back to our news about the Kuwait attack right now. Apparently, Iran's Mehr news agency has released a statement from the IRGC following what appears to be a spat of reciprocal strikes from both the U.S. and Iran. And here's what they said. This is allegedly coming from the IRGC. They said the origin of the aggression against the Sirik Island telecommunications tower was targeted. And following the recent aggression by the invading U.S. Army against a telecom tower in Sirik on the Hormuzgan province, the IRGC Aerospace Force fighters targeted the airbase from which the aggression originated. Also, by the way, I was dead on the money on my analysis. This is literal. I just said that a second ago. But he said, and the predicted targets were destroyed. Take that with a huge grain of salt, by the way. We're not totally sure about that. We don't know if it's been destroyed or not. The IRGC Aerospace Force warned that if the aggression is repeated, then the response will be completely different. And the responsibility lies with the invading U.S. Regime. So that's what they're saying right now. So the IRGC is confirming that they did this in response to the recent airstrikes that took place that CENTCOM just announced. So it appears to be our analysis was dead on. But Enforcer, what say you?
They said, call up the army. Because clearly the army is flying F-35s. Makes a whole lot of sense. But very interesting, and it does appear that this is right on the money of what we had assumed. A big fist bump to me and Matthew, because the analysis here, folks, is immaculate. So many people say, so many doubters say, folks, that we never know what we're talking about, yet we're always proven right, for the most part. on what we analyze as probably being
Man.
the story. Like, well before anyone else could even get the actual story out, we already are like, yep, that's what happened, and it did.
You gotta love it. But also, by the way, I am seeing some confirmation here from Jake Epstein that apparently
Who?
the air. Say what?
Who was that again?
Uh, bro, like he's a defense correspondent for Business Insider.
Oh,
by the
okay.
way.
I'm sorry. I thought you said something else.
Not
I was
every-
like,
not-
what? Who? I was like,
not everybody named Epstein is involved with that other junk. But Jake Epstein does really good work, by the way. He's a defense correspondent. But he apparently said here in a Twitter post, he's confirming that apparently these U.S. airstrikes on Iran were conducted on Saturday and Sunday, which was today, of course, hitting that radar and command and control targets, which Iran was just referring to in that post that came out from Mer News. So that appears to be confirming all the information. So that part of the story that Iran's putting out does actually line up, by the way. Apparently, this was a retaliation for the U.S. airstrikes on that tower that they're talking about, that telecom tower. So that part appears to be truthful to a large degree. But the part that may not be truthful is the part about the targets being destroyed at the airbase. We don't know that. We haven't seen any evidence of it yet.
And so we'll definitely have to see if we can get some further evidence and information on that one here in the near future. But it does appear that we are able to largely conclude the story at the moment. The Iranians conducted a retaliatory attack against the United States for the strikes that we conducted yesterday near to Kazim and Hormuzgan, and it appears that they were attempting to conduct an attack once again on the Ali al-Salim air base. So with that, we are going to be moving on out of this breaking news and back into our normal coverage of the war in Ukraine. Moving us on into our next clip, we also got to see another clip of the fire here in the city of Lazarevo, and we also get to see it here as well. Would you look at that? Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. Like when I first heard you say that, man, I thought you said Jeffrey. I was like, who? I was like, wait, what? I was like.
Man, honestly, I feel bad for him because at this point, having a last name like that, like it's gonna haunt people. Like even if they weren't even involved in that situation, it's like that's gonna haunt people. I feel bad for people stuck with that last name.
Man, honestly, man, I'm not gonna lie though. I mean, like, man, like I was sitting there trying to get towards, like, trying to figure out what was going to be coming next and thinking of my monologue because I knew you were about to say. So, what do you think about it? And I was like, I need to start thinking about what I'm going to say. And then I heard Epstein. I was like, huh? I was like, wait, what? Who? Because I heard some a name start with a J and then Epstein. I was like, huh? I was like, I don't think that guy's in military analysis. I think he's in something else. But moving us on from that, it is time for us to get on into the war in Ukraine, inside of the territorial borders of Ukraine. And I gotta say that there is a lot going on in this area. A lot to cover. Moving us on up and into the area of the northern areas of Ukraine. The Ukrainian air defense fire is working incredibly well today. Let us observe.
Breaking news! Breaking news!
Huh? What?
We have some breaking news right now. Hezbollah is attacking northern Israel again right now. They're launching a brand new attack on Kiryat Shimona in the northern part of Israel right now. So that's another attack happening in literally less than an hour that we're seeing right now. So it looks like the hostilities are picking back up quite a bit. But even the proxy forces of Iran are starting to get more aggressive. So a lot of stuff going on right now. Not a good look for these so-called peace talks.
Damn. These peace talks be warring. Like, damn.
Also, by the way, apparently the Secretary of State of the United States is pushing for a new ceasefire between Israel and apparently Lebanon to get Hezbollah to stop the attacks. I could have sworn, though, there was already a ceasefire in place at the second one, but apparently we all have amnesia, apparently, from the looks of it. So, silly junk happening again.
Oh, that silly business. We all know that one, right? That silly business. We all know it well. Well, it looks like they're hitting that, kick that Shabuba again up there in northern Israel. So we'll have to see if anything. Kiryat Shimona is what I meant to say. But it looks like they're hitting that town again, so we'll have to see if anything actually ends up impacting the city. But moving us on from that, it is time for us to get back into our Ukraine war news, and we were able to see this clip here of the Ukrainian border guards shooting down an incoming Russian drone. Unlike the Russians, they don't undershoot. There they go, firing at the little feller. And the rounds are hidden, but we'll have to mute it here because the music starts playing. And there we go! They got the fella!
Oh. See, they actually know how it works. They know how to do this right here. They're not doing the stupid junk the Russians are doing.
Yeah, see, they know how to work the air defense. They know how to shoot the guns. That's why Russian air defense just ain't working like it should be. We also got to see this clip as well, showing that thing blowing up on the ground in another clip. This is another drone, by the way, that was shot down overnight. Oh, you hear a little air defense fire out there. Seems like it might be a distance away. I'd hope that it is. If it was close, it'd be kind of scary. Oh. Oh, boy.
Well, damn. This guy sounds like he's on something. Sitting there going that.
Man. Bro, I heard that that guy was on that Galaxy pack. I heard that he was not in the right state of mind when that video was made. We also got to see that out in the Kursk region, Russian forces were getting hit quite heavily by the Steel Border Brigade of the Ukrainian Border Guards unit. I have to tell you. You know something, folks, that the President of the United States and Ukraine can both agree on right now?
What?
There's an invasion at the southern border.
I guess.
Well, Ukraine's is just literally with an army, and ours is just kind of, random people. But, at least
You think they're random?
微信报小小微风潮 Long live Xi Jinping! Long live the CCP! Man, my social credit
It's
score
weird.
just rebounded.
It's weird the people lining up at the border, they don't seem to be native. They seem to be possibly from China and maybe like Pakistan and stuff. I don't think that's native to South America.
Man, you see like a very like Chinese looking bureaucrat crossing the border, full suit, CCP lapel on the suit, and everything, and you say, "Hey, where the hell are you from?" I am refugee from Guatemala. I don't know.
I love. Let's see here. I love Takis and I love churros too. It's like, I don't think this is very convincing here. I don't think this is very convincing at all.
Like you say, well, if you're from Guatemala, can you speak Spanish or any of the local indigenous languages there? Yes, of course I can. 吐槽比起张瓦地. That kind of sounds convincing.
if you wanna like you get to the bottom of if somebody's a CCP spy or not, simply ask them their favorite episode of Winnie the Pooh and see what they say. If they're properly CCP, they will be lacking an answer on that because they're not allowed to watch it because it apparently insults the great leader to watch Winnie the Pooh. So if you say, "What's your favorite Winnie the Pooh?" and they say, the episode where Pingu says, no, it's like, that's a CCP.
Lock him up. It's a CCP spy. Oh, man. Honestly, man, I gotta say, folks, I feel like that was a good joke on my end. I feel like that was a good one. But moving us on out of the Kursk area, it is time for us to move on down and into the Russian casualty report, as we have been able to hear that the casualties today were good. Oh, Bliad, 3 Bobcats. Oba!
Oh, yes, that's very nice.
Man, I gotta say, it is something else. And according to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, troop losses are the highest level since early March. 524 vehicles is the new highest daily loss, as is 19 ground robotic complexes, which isn't shown on this demographic, but still is doing good. And we also get to see that artillery and vehicles are the highest month totals of the war, and 2026 totals to date and averages are also presented here by Miss Disa, who is keeping this accurately reported in a spreadsheet, which is actually very impressive. Outside of that, we have been able to confirm that 1,560 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 14 APCs, 524 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 57 artillery pieces, 1,894 drones, 6 MLRSs, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, a pretty good day, and when we compare it to that month average, it's looking incredibly good. Really good. Take a look at this, folks. Here are the May totals for everything. 33,770 Russian soldiers lost over the whole month. On average, about 1,100 a day wounded and killed. 2 tanks on average a day, 5 APCs, 66 artillery pieces, 2 MLRSs, 1 air defense system. That's generally normal for the larger part, but still incredibly good. 1 plane or aircraft. There was a bit of a dry spell there from February up until now. And also 1 helicopter on average. Not bad at all. Also, we can see that those ground robotics complexes are getting destroyed in pretty significant numbers. About 8 a day. 1,800 drones are getting destroyed a day. 4 cruise missiles, 278 supply trucks, and 3 special equipment on average every day of this month, which are incredibly good numbers to see on a running average in most categories, and of course showing us that once again, the Ukrainians are doing incredibly well, and also Miss D should be keeping them records. Very, very much like someone who would be involved in the financial industry, like accounting. Don't you think so, Matthew? Like this is like the work of like an accountant.
It's like in Deal or No Deal. They're like, call the banker. And you're like, they call the banker up there at the top. They have the numbers.
So with these kinds of numbers, would it be possible for me to get a loan? Like it's like show this to the bank, huh?
No loan for you.
Oh, they don't ever give loans out to folks like us. Anyways, moving on out of that news, it is time for us to get on and into the front lines themselves. What do we got going on here? Well, we got down there in the Konstantinivka front, that Special Purposes Unmanned Systems Battalion, GRUG, or KRUK as they call it, has been hitting them Russians. They've been hitting them hard in the National Police.
Man, these police go hard. Like they go harder than the soldiers sometimes. I love to see the police.
Man, the Ukrainian police be like, you have the right to get silent. And then they throw a drone on you. It's like, damn, man, they believe in enforcing the law and them rights. And lefts.
Nobody cares about the constitutional rights more than the Ukrainian police, I tell you.
I tell you, folks, they always say that, some American police groups have like a tough on crime approach. I just don't think they can get close enough to the kind of tough on crime approach that the Ukrainian police have. They seem to be a little bit tougher than the U.S. ones, at least on the law enforcement side of things.
And the Ukrainian police are busting them down.
Man, they's beating them down. Damn.
I had to reword that. I was about to say something else that people were about to misconstrue as some nasty statement. So I had to reword that on the spot. So it came out good. It came out good.
Man, honestly, man, I don't even know what in the world you would have reworded it to, but it turned out fine. It turned out fine.
You know that thing where Will Smith was on the interview and he's like, yeah, back in the day we used to call it bussing on him. And the other guy was like, whoa, like, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, we was always bussing on each other. Man, like I was like, oh my god, man, that stuff was rough, dude. That interview was rough, man. He just kept digging the hole deeper, man. He'd be like, yeah, we was like bussing on each other, man. Like he would bust on me and I bust on it. I was like, bro, stop, like please. You don't know what you're doing. And then he slapped Chris Rock, and I feel like from there he was going downhill. But anyways, we also got to see the Ukrainians conducting drone attacks near the Pokrovsk front. This guy was caught by surprise. This guy was caught with some fries. This guy was caught breathing in flies.
Oh, wow, that guy actually kind of like concealed his position a little bit with the smoke from his supposed to be smokeless powder out of that rifle, but it really wasn't. It was like a musket.
Man, this, whenever he fires a shot, he has to yell, hear ye, after each one.
For real, look at this thing. Look at that. Oh, look, a turtle tank.
Oh, these things are almost obsolete now. Oh, look, some dirt bikes. You got the one in the rear. Got the supply truck, too. Oh, look at this guy. Caught by surprise. Well, looks to me like they're not doing well in Pokrovsk. Moving us on out of that clip, we also got to see another one here from the Pokrovsk area, also showing some Russian artillery getting counter-batteried, as we call it. Back in the day, it'd be called counter-battery. Generally, it's just a part of general drone activities these days.
Also, by the way, apparently the attacks on Kuwait, just to circle back to that for a second, not to use corporate speak, but moving back to that, apparently the attack is over. It looks like flights are starting to land once at Kuwait International Airport. So if there is damage, we should be hearing about it unless the U.S. tries to cover it up again like they did during the last attack 2 days ago. So we might be getting some information on that, but it looks like the attack has concluded.
Well, I thank you so much for circling back on that. And I'd have to say that it's really important that we make sure to synergize with our community and communicate with them properly and effectively to make sure that they know what's going on in the war space and the informational sphere that we cover as a part of our conclusive and comprehensive product that we provide on air to everybody. And I've got to say that we have to give a humongous round of applause and a great deal of appreciation to all of our shareholders and also our co-workers and co-hosts for making sure to provide that news at an up-to-date and regular interval. But moving us on out of that, y'all can tell that the quarter call is going to be insane this year. Woo! But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian logistics getting hit by the 14th Brigade down here as well. The 14th Brigade has actually been moved down to the Pokrovsk area. Usually throughout most of the war, they were up near the Kupiansk front. Someone said attacks ain't over. They is. If they land in planes, it's over. Oh, boy. This also looks like some sort of an autonomous targeting system.
It probably is. They're increasing those quite a bit.
It's really something impressive, really, when you watch it, you know? It's just giving back very little info, though. It's like watching a slideshow. Oh, look, they found a Russian position. Oh, look, a couple of more vehicles out there on the street.
I've been waiting to see that zebra truck pop up in some of these drone footages right here because we forgot to mention it last night, or if we did, I forgot. But the Ukrainians typically have like thermals and stuff on their drones, like some of them. So it doesn't matter what you paint your truck, the thermal is going to spot the heat signature from the engine of the truck and be able to spot the moving object. So that zebra pattern is completely pointless. I see that after we mocked that thing the other day, that thing went viral all over Twitter. Everybody was mocking the hell out of that zebra truck.
Man, the zebra truck was horrendous, man. It was bad. Like, I was like, dang. Also, we got to see the Ukrainians blowing up some warehouses in Donetsk. Also, blowing up them speakers with that loud drum and bass. Well, you see them here blowing up a storage depot of the 26th Army of the Russian Federation. You also see them here targeting another storage depot, apparently for the 51st Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation.
Also, just a small note as well, Israel is once again under attack for another time. They're being attacked literally nonstop, and this is a new location they're being attacked in now, so Hezbollah is letting loose on Israel right now.
Man, Hezbollah be giving out the goods and services. Damn, I have a feeling that the Israelis are going to start issuing out hardware tomorrow to them.
You know what they're probably trying to do? You know what Hezbollah's up to? They know that if they can goad Israel into striking the suburbs of Beirut, they know that Iran's already made a red line about that. If the Israeli airstrikes restart in the suburbs area of Beirut, then that's going to pretty much immediately end the talks between the United States and Iran. So that could be what Hezbollah is trying to do. They could be trying to sabotage it.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. That probably would be. Also, by the way, folks, we have the same clip from earlier, just showing the Russian POV of the clip. Actually, I have to delete that clip from earlier because it turns out that was actually a Ukrainian drone that was shot down by the Russians. And now that actually explains why Matthew was saying that guy sounded like he was on some substances. It's because he's Russian. Makes a lot of sense now that we think about it. But moving us on from that, we've also been able to hear that many Russians are saying that the situation is kind of screwed in this area of the front. As Zapisky veteran said today, the enemy once again proves that in the drone war, it's not the richest that wins, but the fastest and most adaptable. That's also pretty hilarious to think that this guy is insinuating that Russia's rich by any measure. While we are still struggling with centralization and reporting, the armed forces of Ukraine have learned to order FPV drones from thousands of small manufacturers, setting unified standards for them. And here we must honestly admit, we are lagging behind again, not in technology, but in organization. The enemy has established a distributed network of so-called garage manufacturers, small private workshops that make drones on a turnkey basis. The state simply sets requirements and accepts the finished products without interfering in the production process. The result is rapid saturation of the front with up-to-date models, constant feedback from operators, and immediate improvements. Meanwhile, we're still relying on large and our own enterprises with long procurement cycles which are subject to bureaucratic procedures that lag behind the dynamics of the war by months. Damn, the Russians are literally describing the U.S. war industry at this point in their own home country.
Yeah, I would say so. It's crazy stuff.
Plus, there's extreme selectivity in choosing proven, but in fact our own manufacturers. Any new model must go through endless approvals, even when all test protocols are already in place and the product has been deemed successful. This kills initiative and speed. The Ukrainians are well ahead of us, generally, is what the guy concluded in saying. So, not really looking too good for them. On top of that, the frontline losses that Russia is suffering aren't looking good either. This is what the frontline looked like about a week ago. This is what it looks like today. So the Ukrainians are starting to retake a decent amount of ground in the southern front due to the supply situation and also due to Ukrainian counteroffensives proving to be incredibly successful. Here it is a week ago, here it is today, a week ago, today, a week ago, today. Many can see they are losing ground. Not good for the Russians. Not good for them, blade. But moving us on out of that clip, we also were able to see additionally that this thing showed up at a Ukrainian farm today. The dacha.
Oh, what the? Wait, what is that, man? A mobile house?
Man, they took mobile homes to a whole new level in Ukraine, man.
Man, that's crazy. That's literally a mock-up house. What is that, on top of a tank?
I think it's like on top of a tractor or something, to make it not stand out to get hit by Russian drones. I think they covered the tractor in a fake house.
That's insane. Back to the clip up again. Like, let's see this thing moving down the way. Look at that.
Bro, that's comical. Like, that is hilarious.
Man, it's literally, look at that. The house is pulling a right. That's not normal. That's not normal. Man, some schizo right now is looking at this. Someone, the houses are moving. The houses are moving. I knew it. I knew it.
Man, someone hasn't been taking their lithium. Man, like it's like someone.
Man, that's honestly the way it is for young people when they want to buy a house. They're like, "Oh, you almost had it. You got to be quiet," and the house just drives away.
Man, bro, some Russian that's in there. Finally, I'm gonna blow up this stupid house with these stupid people. They fly the drone over here. They're like, "What? What the?" And then the commander's like, "What's going on here, Captain? The house, it's gone. It's not like it just got up and drove away, you idiot." It's like, meanwhile, it literally got up and drove away. Bro, I'm not gonna lie. That is the craziest thing I have ever seen.
That is insane. Just a house moving through people's streets.
I mean, honestly, when you think about it, that's actually pretty smart, though. Because if there's ever a drone attack that happens and all of your farm machinery is disguised like houses, you can stop them in the field anywhere. And even if they're like really weird looking compared to each other, it could just kind of look like a village and be completely overlooked.
Yeah, what if you had like literally a whole town like full of these things, like a whole town where you could really screw with the Russians, you could just move the whole town over to the right or something.
Oh my lord, man. Imagine, they'd be like, wait a minute. I think our GPSs are not working. There's a whole town right here. And on the map, it shows that there's supposed to be nothing there. Bro, yeah. Oh my god, that would mess with them so hard.
Better yet, put this thing in the path of the Russians wherever they're making small advances. Put this little like fake mobile home town in front of them, and then every single night when the Russians go to sleep or they take a little rest, move the town slowly closer to the Russians, like their front line positions, until finally you're like right up on. They won't know the difference. They're on vodka anyway. They'll think they're drunk, and then all of a sudden they can hop out of their houses while they go to fight, and they'll be like right there in front of them.
Man, better yet, dude, on the last day when they're like literally like 3 feet from them when they go to sleep that night, they literally just like pick up the houses and just walk over on top of them and then place it down. And then when they wake up in the morning, it's just Zelensky inside the house tapping them on the cheek. "Good morning, sweet one. It's time for you to go to be a prisoner of war." They're gonna be like, "What the hell?" Like, they're gonna be like, "What in the hell is going on?" Man, honestly, there's a lot of potential with this.
And I already have a perfect name for the unit of these fake houses. Call them the Trailer Park Boys. That's what they'll call them. That's the unit. The Trailer Park Boys are moving in. They're attack forces. The assault is coming in. It's the Trailer Park War.
Man, honestly, there's a lot of potential with this. We are going to watch these farmers with great interest. Moving us on from this clip, we've also been able to hear that we finally got the picture. That is the hole that was punched in the side of reactor number 6, turbine hull at the ZMPP. This is the IAEA's picture, by the way. So it did happen. But notice, apparently the Russians didn't leave the debris anywhere around and they cleaned it up. So, if it's a Ukrainian one, why didn't they leave it behind to be like, look, see, it's Ukrainian debris. They cleaned it up. I think that's showing us something there. It's tampering with an alleged crime scene. And that's not anything that's breaking the law. I mean, they can do that because it's occupied Russian territory and whatnot. but it's showing that they're trying to hide something. Otherwise, they probably just would have left the stuff out there for the IAEA inspectors to see and then report there was debris on the ground, very much indicative of a Ukrainian design or a Ukrainian design drone sitting around the impact site, and the Russians didn't keep it around. Tells me it's probably Russian, and the Russians were the ones that ended up piloting this thing into the side of the reactor, or the turbine hull for the most part, and then ended up covering it up by clearing out the debris of the drone and its parts that were laying on the ground around the area. So, moving us on out of that, we've also been able to see that down near Kherson, some Russian forces got hit today, specifically the substation.
Isn't this the substation in Zaporizhia?
This is the one in Kherson, I believe.
I thought it was in Zaporizhia.
Wait a minute. Oh, it is. Why did I put it in here, over here? No, let me move this over here. Sorry, folks, I geolocated that one wrong. You're actually right. Let me eat my foot, everybody, for getting that wrong. But moving us on from that, it is in Zaporizhia. This is the Konka substation.
This wouldn't happen to be the substation that helps to feed power from or to the nuclear plant, would it?
I don't think so.
I'd hope not.
I'd hope not. Doesn't really seem that anyone said anything about that, but yeah, it could be, it could be. But that's the end of that clip, and moving us on from that, it is time for us folks to get on out of that bit of news and on up into Kyiv, because we have two more things to cover. Sadly, we don't have a speech today, but we have two more things. Ukraine has requested officially from the United States a license from the U.S. to domestically produce Patriot missiles in Ukraine. The license would allow Ukrainian manufacturers to build the interceptors used to knock out Russian ballistic missiles, currently in short supply globally. So right now, the Ukrainians are trying to build their own Patriots, and they're asking the United States for the licensing rights to be able to build them inside of Ukraine. We've also been able to hear that Zelensky talked about possible liftings of sanctions on the Russian Federation. And here's what he had to say about it. So this is going to be Zelensky's speech. Shalom Ukrainsky Ukrainki. Lifting sanctions means helping Russian soldiers by helping the Russian defense industry. After some sanctions were eased, we did not see any surprises like lower global prices for oil, gas, or diesel, because the share of Russian oil accounts for only 5% of global supply. How could it make a difference? So lifting sanctions is not about that. I think it's about building dialogue with the Russians, but it's not the right approach, because they don't understand words or empathy and see it as a sign of weakness. We need strong and impose more sanctions on them. So I would
That
say,
sounds like our analysis, like almost verbatim right there. Like we were saying the same thing. The U.S. keeps giving these waivers to the Russians to sell their oil internationally because the U.S. claims that it's helping to lower the global oil price. But that doesn't work like that in reality. It doesn't work like that at all. So Zelensky's saying it's about Russian dialogue and keeping the dialogue channels open in the U.S. and Russia. I think it's worse than that. I think there's another reason behind it.
I would have to agree. And also, folks, we have the absolute geniuses of Twitter on the matter. This guy right here said, "This may be a dumb question, but have you considered sitting down face to face with Putin in a neutral country to discuss this like men and end this insanity? Deep down, Russia does not want a war, and deep down, Ukraine doesn't want a war either. Enough is enough. It's time to shake hands." Man, I gotta tell you, folks, Twitter people have, no sense. It's I don't know what world they live in, but it's have you not seen the Ukrainians give, an endless amount of concessions to try and meet the Russians in the middle, and the Russians make none? It's crazy to think that people still live in that kind of a, la-la land world of reality where it's not reality, it's just whatever the hell they want to think. It's well, yeah, nobody wants the war, but the Russian government isn't willing to make any concessions to even meet Ukraine in the middle, so what are they supposed to do? Just give up and unconditionally surrender? Clearly not. That's not favorable. So, anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on out of our news for the day, because we've actually reached the end of the day's news here on day 1558 with an unbelievably successful fundraiser that has reached $2.8 thousand raised. Specifically, the exact number is 2,810. And I've got to say that it's an unbelievable and incredible thing to see that we were once again able to achieve significant feats here on this Sunday night fundraiser by hitting and surpassing the fundraiser goal. And not only that, We have also been able to cover quite a lot of news today. I have to say that we're always entirely honored and greatly appreciative to be the ones that cover the news for all of y'all, and we still have a ways to go. We've got plenty of questions to answer, and we want to make sure to answer as many of them as we can. So, Matthew, please tell me, what do we got?
Okay, so first of all, to call off the rest of our top donors of the night, we did have a 333 from none other
Hey!
Rose, the signature 333. A big shout to Hal. Also, a big shout to Espen Turgenhagen, who put in a $150 support as well to the fundraiser, bringing us up to just roughly about $2,800 raised, which is several $100s above the goal right there. So fantastic work once again, and a huge shout out to literally everybody that donated once again tonight to make that possible, once again for a really good charity, which is Nova Ukraine, doing really good work inside of Ukraine, of course. But with that, Enforcer, would you like to weigh in before we jump into some super chats and then get our live chat questions?
I gotta say, a humongous shout out to Hal Rose and also Espen Turgenhausen, once again, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, for getting a humongous amount of support in here in these final moments of the fundraiser that we've seen tonight. It's an absolutely incredible thing, and I've got to say a huge thanks to y'all once again for that. And so, I hope that does address that incredibly well, the best I can. And I also saw Matthew address something. I want to give my address to it. Someone said, let's see here. To mock someone who wants peace isn't cool either. Well, it is cool, like to a degree, like I have to say, because if it's senseless, then it's an absolutely stupid thing, and it needs to be pointed out that that's ridiculous. Because if someone says peace is good, and I love peace, that's a great thing. But if you're saying, like, so let's make peace with Hitler, then, like, then you kind of lose me there. That's kind of the part where it's like, well, that's pretty dumb. Because a lot of people derided people like Neville Chamberlain before the Second World War, and a lot of people would go, hey, dude, that's, like, not cool to, like, mock people who want peace. Hitler's probably not that bad of a guy. And then he ended up being one of the worst people we've known in recorded history. So, that's kind of where you lose me, and I will make fun of people is when they're like, hey, negotiating with, like, one of the worst people in modern history that is literally shown at every single point in path that they're a cutthroat. But let's pretend like they're not a cutthroat aiming to, genocide an entire nation, and let's sit down and pretend like they're actually people that we can talk with. That's not a legitimate argument, like an arguing position. That's a fake position living in a fantasy land, and that should be made fun of.
And also, it's like the onus is on the Russians to bring this war to an end. Like, it's on them. Anybody that comes in like that commenter on Twitter, making it seem like Zelensky is the one holding things up, that's how you immediately know somebody is a Russian or a pro-Russian supporter or something like that, or they lean toward the Russian side at a minimum, I would say. It's like, I saw there was some lunatic in our comments today on Twitter, a couple of different people that were saying, well, how come Zelensky won't sit down with Putin and end this thing? It's like, well, it's not up to him to end it. He's defending his country. It's up to Putin to sit down and say, hey, I screwed up big time. Let's bring this to an end and have a peace deal. But he's obviously never going to do that because otherwise he wouldn't have invaded Ukraine in the first place. So, yeah, anybody you see out there saying that's on Zelensky, you can pretty much write them off pretty much immediately.
Yeah, and also on top of that, like there's points where you can't like just sit down and talk with people because you can't talk with them. And the Ukrainians have proven that well enough ever since the current president came in and said he was going to end the war on day one. And we're now on day like 400 something of the war ending on day one, or at least attempting to. And the Russians have not budged an inch. Those are people you can't talk with. Like, I'm sure the person who said that in the chat, who's DH Morgan, I'm sure you have problems with people in your life that you don't talk to them, or you haven't sat down, you haven't concluded some sort of an issue that you have with them because they're not able to be reasoned with and they're not agreeable to anything at all, rather than something that's completely within their line of interests at the detriment of yours. And so that would be a fairly unreasonable sort of a thing to say, that people have a right to deride you because of something that you've tried to fix and is completely unfixable because the people you're working with are impossible. And the Ukrainians find themselves in a very similar position to that in foreign policy, to where the country they're at war with and fighting a fight for their own survival right now is completely impossible to deal with. And no matter what Ukraine's tried to do, Russia has never accepted it, never looked at it as a good faith attempt, and they've continued to try and screw over the Ukrainians and continue to demand unconditional surrender, which is an absolutely impossible situation for a country like Ukraine to deal with. And so that's why I do point it out, and I do make fun of it, because the position is absolutely asinine and ridiculous. But anyways, it's time for us to get on into them questions. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our questions here. First of all, let's grab our Morse code decoders. Tonight we had Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroyo, Fluffness, Coach, Cover, Iron Brian. They said, the Morse code said, flip flop, bibbidi bop. What can I say except Scooby Doo, LLT, LSA?
Bro, why are you scared to read Scooby Dooby Doo? Bro, like, you're like, Scooby Doo. Bro, like, it's like, man. But
Man, you wilding out with these Morse codes.
I don't even know what to put them. Like I'm running out of ideas, man. I've made like 1,500 of them. I'm like, I can't come up with like a unique one every night. So I'm like, I was like starved for ideas for this tonight. But like,
Man, he said, you got stuck on a loop there for a minute.
man, bro, I got put on that repeat, man, like a broken record. But that's the sound of money. Y'all got that done on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. And I got to give a huge congrats to the Least Marine Corps for getting that correct, because while it was largely gibberish, it was still translated correctly. And I got to say that that's an amazing and an incredible thing to see. The Least Marine Corps is getting the Morse code message correct time and time again. So a huge shout out to all of y'all once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into dim questions. What do we got, Matthew?
All right, so let me level with you. We have our first super chat question here, which goes to none other than Rosalie Love. And thank you very much, Rosalie, for that $20 support. We do appreciate that. She said, a great fundraiser. And how much has been raised since February the 24th of 2022?
And a big thanks to you for the support, Rosalie Love. And I'd have to say that I thank you so much for appreciating the fundraiser tonight. And as far as how much we've raised, we don't have the exact total on hand, but I think that it's somewhere around 1.7 million, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Matthew?
Higher. It's somewhere around the 1.8 mark or so. Sadly, it's hard to keep track of exactly how much it is, and of course, all the financial side of things is handled by YouTube completely. So they handle all the accounting on their end for it. So we just run them every Sunday, and it's obviously been racking up, every single Sunday that we've been running them. But it's somewhere above 1.8. I just don't have the exact number, sadly.
Sadly, neither of us have the exact number, but it is somewhere on up there. I think the last time we had an exact number, it was in the 1.4 area. And then sadly, the actual record keeping on that ended up getting kind of screwed, because to give you a little bit of a backstory behind that, YouTube has the total, but I would keep a little total on my phone on my spreadsheet. But way back in the day, years ago, my phone almost got hacked through Telegram somehow, some way. I don't really know how it happened. I'm not a tech person, but the Telegram started acting odd, so I had to completely wipe the phone and restart it. And when I did that, the spreadsheet, the little note thing I had on my notes disappeared, and I wasn't able to get it back. So the last time we had an exact count, it was 1.4 something, and we've been trying to kind of eyeball it from there. So it's around 1.8 at this point, but the exact number is still a little bit fuzzy at this point. We're not exactly sure what it is to the dollar, but it's somewhere in the 1.8 figure. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a huge thanks to you for support, Rosalie Love, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Rosalie once again, and thank you, Rosalie. So what the hell? Here's another one.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to you so much once again for enjoying the channel and supporting it, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And Tom Exman said, first year anniversary was 67,000 raised. That is still actually the largest fundraiser we've ever run, was that first year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. And I believe that fundraiser was for Doctors Without Borders, if I'm not mistaken. And it did so amazing. It was done amazingly well. I was blown away by it. And since then, we have never surpassed that on any fundraiser since. I think we got close one time, we raised 40-something thousand on another fundraiser after that, but I never think we got close to that again. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have another 20 from Rosalie, and thank you very much, Rosalie, for the third of the night. And she said, thank you, LSA, for your incredible donations.
And I gotta say, a big thanks to you for support, and thank you for enjoying the channel and also the amazing fundraiser. I mean, I gotta say, folks, that it's unbelievable that the fundraisers are still surpassing goals. We thought a while ago that the fundraisers would probably eventually fizzle out and die, just because people either wouldn't be able to support them, or they wouldn't want to support them, or they lose interest. And still, we're running fundraisers every Sunday, which is honestly just amazing and unbelievable to me. I never thought that they would make them this they would make it this far, and they're still going. And so a humongous thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, I just saw Old Warrior fella say it was the firefighters fundraiser that hit 40,000. Let me check that here really quickly because I still have that one. And also, this is something a little bit interesting as well to show y'all a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. YouTube only allows me to keep 50 of them. Like for some reason in this little thing. Like if I try and go and make a new one right now, it tells me you're limited to 50 fundraisers at this time. I don't know why, and I kind of find that, you know, I just don't know why there's a limit to it. So every single Sunday before we run a new fundraiser, I have to take the smallest one out of these, like, and delete them. The money's still kept in the YouTube accounts and all that, and it's still distributed to the nonprofits. It's just that it's not kept here anymore in this little, like, spot on my control board to look at it anymore. This is the one that we're actually running right now tonight. It says 0 out of 2.5. I don't know why, but if I refresh it, it ought to change. Let's see here. Where is it again? What world is it? Hold up. Here we are. So there it is. Now it's updated 2.8. At this point, the goal was 2.5. But let me see. Where in the world is the LA Fire Department one? Because that one should still be on here. Let's see here. Doctors on borders. I'm not seeing it for some reason. I'm missing it. But these are the ones that we have right now in the spreadsheet. And I've kept the largest one here for all of those years. And I'm trying to see if I can find it here. There it is, $64,364.30 raised for Doctors Without Borders, and that was like 3 years ago, which is crazy to still think that that fundraiser ever made it to that point. I'm still shocked by that, actually. But a huge thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
I also have a $20 support from Old Warrior fella. Thank you, Old Warrior, as well. He said, Enforcer Matt, the U.S. Has kind of messed up international relations. And also, they're not business deals. They picked a fight, and they can't bully and bluster their way out of this one. Can't win and can't run. And what do you expect his next move will be? Well, I mean, his next move, I don't know. Like his options have been limited at this point due to the circumstances. So he really doesn't really have a whole bunch of options. Really, the only option left is to fight or simply pack up and surrender at this point. So packing up and surrendering would be horrendous. And by the time the midterms roll around, that would be very horrendous at that point. So I think they're going to have to fight. I'm not sure if he really has a choice at this point. He's kind of forced into fighting again, which is what he should be doing. We started the war, and why not finish it? But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. It's just that because of the slowness of those cognitive tests, folks. But because of that, it's going to take forever to get to around to starting the conflict again and getting that on the ball, but it's going to have to restart. There's no other way to resolve it. There's no way to resolve this through talks, so they're going to have to go back to war. So I think that's what is going to end up happening at some point. It's just that because of the thought process involved, it's going to take an incredibly long time for that to eventually happen. I don't know when it'll happen, but a big thanks to you for support, and I hope that this addressed that incredibly well, Old Warrior fella. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Chef Danny B, and thank you, Chef Danny, for that support as well. He said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. Sorry I haven't been in much. I've been busy getting B's catering up and running, and still at the restaurant, and actually have today off, but got to post a new menu for my catering tomorrow.
Oh,
and you're still working extremely hard then in that case. You're still working at the restaurant and the catering, so you were working still overtime. Also, by the way, a new menu, you say. I wonder how often do you switch up that menu? I'll be curious to know for the catering right there. That's actually, I didn't know you switched it up that often. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that is pretty interesting. I mean, that is a load of work, by the way. Like, that is an insane amount. And I gotta say, you're still working down to the bones. But I do also have to say that hopefully that will go well. And I'd make sure to take it easy from time to time. You don't want to overwork yourself. Like we're used to overworking ourselves, much like you are. But you always have to say how to carry. You shouldn't overwork yourself, and then we all overwork ourselves, anyways, I guess. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from CMB, and thank you very much, CMB, for that support right there. I was trying to double check and see if you had left a comment with it, but for some reason, the tab's not showing up right now. So thank you very much for the support once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, CMB. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're still greatly appreciative of your support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a two from Indy Gray, and thank you very much for the support. They said, "Man, I can feel it. A deal with Iran is so close." I hope that's sarcasm. I hope that's sarcasm very much because a deal is definitely not close. I'd have to disagree if that's a serious statement, but I think they're probably trying to be funny, I'd imagine. But it seems like every single weekend, the hostilities go crazy. And then on Monday, it's like, oh, a deal is. So I'm surprised we didn't hear that tonight on Sunday from these so-called journalists that, oh, a deal is really close. I think they couldn't avoid it tonight. Iran kind of ruined those plans. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, we got to get into that business, of like saying that kind of stuff and then, making financial actions based off of what we're telling people. Like, that seems like a pretty crooked sort of a business to get involved in. But it sounds like some people don't know him by name, but I've been hearing that there's been allegations thrown around that some people are getting involved in that kind of business, and that's why, although there's quite literally no indications whatsoever that a deal is coming around, the news keeps getting reported every single week at the beginning of it that peace is just hours away because it ends up fluctuating the markets a good deal. At least that's what I've been hearing, folks, that some people have been involved in, but their names I have no eyes to see nor tongue to speak. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the live chats. Matthew, what do we got? Take it away.
All right, so our first live chat question here goes to none other than CSX Fan, who said, do you think the U.S. will resume military action on Iran, especially since the Iranians have been rebuilding their military?
I would say yes. Eventually, they're going to have to resume military actions, and we'll end up having to have a pretty tough fight because we basically let them rebuild to close to full strength like they were at the beginning of the conflict. But I would say yes. Eventually, we are going to have to make the choice, because it's an inevitable one, to resume the conflict and see it through to a successful conclusion. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And a great question, by the way. Also, I like to hear that you're a fan of CSX, a very interesting railroad. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a question from Tac, who said, do MIRVs have targeting systems, or is it just the main missile that has the targeting, and then the releases like a shotgun shot?
So the MIRV actually independently releases each warhead. It's over a very short period of time, but the MIRV is able to maneuver to make sure that the kind of like the jettison trajectory of each MIRV is slightly different. So it doesn't really disperse like a shotgun, say. It more so disperses like let me think here. How in the world would this disperse? Like if we had to describe it as something else, it's really hard. Well, it's basically like. It's basically kind of like a Nerf blaster, if you think about it. Like, that's probably the best way to explain it. To where if you want to shoot one towards the front, you pull the trigger on the Nerf blaster, it fires a dart to the front, then you fire one a little to the left, a little up, a little down, and a little to the right, and you're able to get a little bit of a pattern or a spread going. And you can independently alter that for each one, so that way they can hit independent targets in different areas generally. But it's not a humongous spread. Like, you couldn't drop one of the reentry vehicles on Omsk and then another one on Moscow. They all kind of had to be within that similar area, because they can't really alter or affect the trajectory too much. But then there is also multiple autonomous reentry vehicles, which are called MARVs, which generally aren't talked about a lot in the modern day because there's not a whole load of them. But those allow for independent maneuvering of the reentry vehicles while they're re-entering the atmosphere, which allows for them to get a slightly wider spread in a hypothetical scenario, but it also allows for them to make their flight paths erratic instead of a linear impact, well, more so a linear path to the target, which makes it more difficult for any kind of advanced air defenses like the GMD to try and intercept or shoot down those independent reentry vehicles, or the autonomous ones more so. So I hope that does address that the best I can. Great question. And with that, we're on the next one.
And our next one goes to Justin, who said, what is the main difference between the Shiite and the Sunni Muslims? Now, I'm not an expert on how that whole religion works, but it's basically like the difference between like a Christianity sect, like for example Baptist versus like Pentecostal. It's kind of like that, but it's a little bit different. Basically, to summarize it here, the Sunni Muslims are apparently, from what I understand, to be the majority. They make up about I think it's like 85% of Muslims globally. The Shiites are about 10 to 15%, or roughly or so. But it's like a minute difference, but it's made to be a big deal apparently. The Sunnis believe that the Prophet did not explicitly name his successor, but the Shiite Muslims, or the Shiite, believe that the Prophet apparently designated his cousin to be the successor of Muhammad. So it's stuff like that. Like, it's nothing, they're not fundamentally different, but there's some small, minute differences that make them, have some disagreements. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's pretty much the best answer, is that the Sunnis believe that a leader should be elected amongst like a kind of almost like a papal council. So the Shia, well, actually the Sunnis are probably, like, if we were to describe them as something analogous in Christendom, they're very similar to like the Catholic Church, to where the cardinals get together and they elect a new pope. The Sunnis believe that senior, I forgot what they're called, but it's the senior religious
Imams?
leaders. Yeah, something like that, of the caliphate, because back in the day there used to be like a codified caliphate that existed in the Islamic world that allowed for this sort of a thing to operate a lot like the Vatican or the Catholic Church would, but the Islamic form, and they would get together to elect basically, let me see here, I'm trying to think of the name of the actual religious head of the caliphate back in the day.
Caliph?
Yeah, Caliph. They would elect a Caliph, and they would basically operate as the Pope. And then the Shiites, on the other hand, they believe that there is supposed to be no elections, like a papal council of cardinals and all that, or the imams. They believe that it is just by default the descendants of Allah, which would be, well, more so Muhammad, which would be Muhammad's cousin, like Matthew said. They're the ones that are supposed to rule, and it basically works off of kind of like a right of succession. So like the firstborn in that family line is the next one to take its place, and if they're not available, then it's the next of kin, or it's the second born, and so on. So that's generally kind of the difference, but it's a lot like Christendom in that way, because it's actually a pretty big split, like as far as how they view each other. It's kind of like how some Protestants hate Catholics and some Catholics hate Protestants, although they're all Christians. And it's because of the different kinds of I guess you could say procedural or traditional differences between them. Like, one thing that's very interesting about the difference between the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church, which historically have had very big qualms with each other, is that the Eastern Orthodox Church believes in the mysticism of Christ and also God. So they believe that a lot of the things about God and Christ aren't really explainable. They're beyond comprehension and understanding, and that's why Eastern Orthodoxy leans heavily into their practices religiously, kind of into the mysticism of Christendom. Catholics work off of the idea that basically everything that you need to do to be a good Christian is basically codified in code, which is the Vulgata, which is the Latin version of the Bible. And so if you follow these certain kinds of processes, like you go to Mass, you do confessions, such things, it's such specific things that are basically laid out in stone, then you will be able to make it. And and those differences right there, they seem kind of small. Like, it's literally just a different interpretation of the same thing. The Eastern Orthodox folks say it's, Christ is enigmatic. You can't really understand Christ or God completely. And then the Catholics say, well, we think that there's some clear answers as to how to understand them, or be able to be one of the lambs of God and make it to heaven. And that leads to an entire rift and a split. And that's actually why those two churches ended up splitting and becoming completely separate ones.
What's weird about Iran is, I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, this is based on my understanding. I don't really study like Islam faith very much. I don't really study that stuff to a very fine degree. But to my understanding, most Iranians are actually Sunni Muslim, which is the majority, and that's also globally as well. They're about 85% of Muslims are Sunni, but the leadership is Shiite, which is the 10 to 15% minority of Muslims world. That's what the official IRGC sanctioned religion is, or at least the regime's sanctioned religion is Shia, which is a smaller minority of Muslims. So it's kind of interesting with that the minority is the one controlling, even though the country's majority Sunni.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I believe if I'm correct, Saddam Hussein was also a Shiite, and it was the Shiite minority running the Sunni majority populations of Iraq for a couple of decades under the Hussein regime, which was also a huge point of contention, at least theologically, in Iraq, if I'm remembering correctly. And here we are, folks. So like whenever you get into anything, so y'all are way off. How? Like, please explain. Like if we are, let us know how. Don't just say it. You're not
I'm
doing us any
open.
good.
I'm open to hear on this one. I'm not an expert in this topic right here. Honestly, truthfully, I could kind of care less. All I care about is it's like people can believe whatever they want. It's just don't mess with us and leave America alone. Like that's the main thing. Outside of that, I'm like they can believe whatever they want. Like if they want to be Sunni, Shiite, whatever, that's their ability. They can be whatever they want. But you can't go out there and say death to America and death to Israel. You can't do that. That's where the line gets drawn.
Yeah, it's kind of generally, folks, it's kind of similar with any religion. If you use a religion to try and justify violence against another group for a theological difference, you've crossed a line. Like if anyone said, like, for some reason the Eastern Orthodox Church itself is mobilizing to destroy and kill all Americans, well, then I'm going to have a beef with the Eastern Orthodox Church for that reason. It's that sort of a line of thinking. But it's a very interesting thing when you get into the theology of everything. And then the other interesting thing about the Christian sects, because Christianity is a lot more diverse than Islam, because Islam generally falls under Sunni or Shiite. There's really no other in-betweens. But with Christianity, you have the Catholics, you have the Eastern Orthodox, and then you have the Protestants, which most people in America are generally Protestants. I think something like 70% of all people in the United States, according to the census, that claim that they're Christian are Protestants, and something along the lines of 35% or so are Catholics, if I'm remembering the number correctly. But Protestants are a very wide and very varied group. Generally with some pretty interesting beliefs. Some of them would generally get in the lines of heresy if you actually look into them, like the actual codified like tenets of Christianity, like the Holy Trinity. Some believe that the Holy Trinity doesn't exist and each one's basically a different God. So Jesus, God, and the Holy Ghost are completely different entities instead of being three in one. And that's and also I forgot to mention, that just made me remember. That's actually the big thing about Eastern Orthodoxy, where they say the whole thing's mysterious and you really can't understand it, is because they say that the Holy Trinity is beyond human comprehension. It's something just beyond our knowing. There's really no way to explain it or even understand it, because it's of divine creation, and that's what adds the mysticism into the main elements of Eastern Orthodoxy. The Catholics say it's easily explainable, it's just three in one, and that's just, it is what it is, there's nothing mysterious about it. And then some Protestant groups will say that it doesn't, like, they're literally just three separate things, they're not three in one, which completely violates generally like the key tenet of Christendom for the large part amongst most groups. But really, honestly, folks, like, we don't get into religion a lot on the channel because a lot of people are very strongly opinionated on it. But I've studied at least the significant religions, like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I had to do it in college, and it's actually very fascinating. I don't remember a lot of it. It was only one class, and honestly, it was kind of a little bit boring. But it was incredibly interesting looking back on it, the kind of differences ideologically that are there. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
All right, so this one's actually a super chat from Game Theory, and thank you, Game Theory, for that 5. They said Russia should launch their rods from God instead of MIRVs. Also, Union Pacific Lifer here.
And I gotta
Man,
say,
Russia. Man, I just remembered that whole thing. It's a Call of Duty reference. And Russia couldn't afford that to save their life. They really couldn't. I mean, I think the reason why that system was never really like formally, I guess, deployed or developed in the United States is because of how prohibitively expensive it would be, I think.
and I had to say, yeah, I was actually about to say, Russia couldn't do that because they're broke poor, and that would take loads of money to get tungsten rods up into space, like a humongous amount, especially in one solid block, like, which would be the only way they're usable. That would be near impossible for them. But beyond that, I have to say, a huge thanks to you for support, Game Theory, and also really cool to hear that you're a Union Pacific lifer. That's really neat, and so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next question here goes to none other than Justin once again. He said, the IDF has taken many casualties from Hezbollah drones as of late. Do you think Israel will pull back soon because of it?
I think they probably will be forced to because the casualties will end up becoming unsustainable or untenable, and also their positions will become untenable as a result. So they'll probably have to withdraw and then try and rework their doctrine and tactics and then push back in once they have effective defenses and counters to these sorts of threats. So I would say yes. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Littlefoot, who said, "Do we not have smaller drones that we can slow down to get deep into those tunnels inside of Iran?"
Not quite. We don't really have anything like that at the moment, and it probably would be beyond our capabilities for now with the kind of drone technology that we have. Also, on top of that, the tunnels are fairly deep, so you would have to conduct some pretty continuous strikes in there to be able to try and clear it all out, or you would just have to hope that a chain reaction starts wherever the point of original impact is that would eventually burn off and destroy the rest of the rockets that are inside of the tunnel, which you might not really be able to count on too much because the fire burns too heavily at the start. The tunnel could be deprived of oxygen, and then the fire could be killed off pretty quickly and not spread to cause the chain reaction we'd be looking for in the tunnel. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next question goes to none other than LWK, who said, "Did you guys cover the bomber that was destroyed in Taganrog?"
No, we actually didn't. We did not cover that. There was actually a couple, by the way, what he's talking about, and sadly we didn't have that today, are these Tu-142s that are these reconnaissance and anti-submarine patrol bombers right here. And I believe, if I remember correct, one of them was destroyed in Taganrog at the refurbishment facility down on the coast. I sadly didn't have the video of that one today. I saw it somewhere earlier, but for some reason, I didn't have it to put down on the map later tonight. I don't know why. Come to think of it. But yes, I did hear about that, and it was a pretty impressive sort of a hit. So with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a question from Stuart. He said, "Good evening, gentlemen. And why did Wagner stop their advance on Moscow and make a deal with Putin that ultimately cost Prigozhin his life?" Also, by the way, Stuart, Prigozhin was a walking dead man. The moment he started that rebellion, there was no circumstance he was going to live. He was dead from that moment on. Like, Putin was going to get him one way or another. So he was finished already. And he probably knew that to a large degree, but I'm not sure if he knew exactly how it was going to happen. He eventually got killed in a private jet wreck, from the looks of it. I think he got shot down along with his buddy who had a little bit of a bad connection with old times of Germany. But also, I think the official reason they say that Prigozhin stopped is because he generally didn't have as much support as he thought he had in the Russian forces around Moscow, and he thought the battle was going to be bloody. And also, Belarus let him have a deal where all the Wagner forces could basically go to Belarus and have immunity for the most part. But I think it was something deeper than that. I think Putin might have got a hold of his family and might have been threatening him with that, but it's not officially confirmed. But I think it might have been something more serious like that that ultimately stopped Prigozhin, because he knew he was a dead man already. He knew he was not going to be allowed to live at that point. So I think it might have been something like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think his family was most likely being threatened by the Russian government, and that's what made him back off. And I would say that the other elements are plausible. But, I mean, that didn't really stop them from just breaking out and going to Moscow. And on top of that, if they thought that there wasn't really a lot of support for them, every unit they met on the highway to Moscow stood aside and let them go on their way, even when they had orders to stop them. So I think that those stories are kind of a little bit tough to sell because none of the units outside of Moscow showed any loyalty to the Putin government. Even when they made it into the Moscow military district, they still were showing no loyalty to the Putin government. And so I would say that the idea that there wasn't going to be that there was going to be a bloody battle around Moscow. I feel like that one's kind of one that they're trying to make up after the fact to make it seem more reasonable than his family was most likely taken hostage, and for their safety, he probably backed off for that. And also due to the fact that Belarus, like Matthew was saying, said that the Wagner unit could be brought into exile and live in Belarus, generally without being harmed by the Russians. So I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to JB Najalki once again. Excuse me. He said, "What is the reason the U.S. is so hesitant to restart this war, in your opinion? It seems like there's never going to be a deal, and I doubt Iran would honor it anyway."
I would have to say that generally the reason why I believe that they're hesitant is because the president was way overconfident. I generally and I'd have to say, folks, that before I even get into this is not to be political, but this is just reading it for what it is. So if it sounds bad, it's just bad. But because the president is way overconfident in himself and generally has a very heavy touch of the narcissism, he believed that anything he touches turns to gold, and the military operation quite truly would start and end in 3 days. Because if you look at how the military operation was conducted, there was literally nothing done for the larger part to try and deal with the potential blockade of the Hormuz. And as we heard from him later on an audio recording when he was talking to the press, he stated that when he was talking to the British and he was talking to Starmer and asking for the British to get involved militarily in this operation, Starmer said it'd probably take him a week to get the answer back as to whether or not Britain could get involved. And the president said to him, well, the war's about to start literally like tomorrow or the next day, and by the time y'all join in, this whole thing's going to be over in like 3 days. And so apparently that was the idea. So once the war went on longer than 72 hours, the military plans were done for. Like, there was literally no plans beyond 3 days. So then the whole war started to just unravel in real time because we had no plan. And that's also why instead of seeing any sort of a larger complex or intricate strategy to actually dismantle Iran, every day just turned into we bombed Tehran, a couple of other big cities, and that was it. And it was like that for about an entire month afterwards, after those first opening days, because there was no plan beyond them. So now they've stopped the war, and the situation is very tough. The strait is now mined. This is the worst case scenario that could have ever happened, is that the strait is mined and blockaded. The Iranian government did not collapse with the death of Khomeini, which was generally expected, at least from what we know now, that once Khomeini died, the U.S. government was expecting that the Iranians would collapse and implode due to a lack of centralized leadership, which did not happen, which shows that there's a lot of ideological hardliners in the government, more so than we anticipated. And so the Iranian government was a lot more resilient than we expected, and they also lasted militarily longer than we thought, and they were able to blockade the strait. So now we're trying to figure out if the war restarts, we're in the worst possible hypothetical position to be in to start the war from, because we're basically starting in a 20-foot deep hole and having to try and figure out how to climb back out and then into the clouds. And that's a pretty hard position for us to be in. I think that's what's getting them concerned about restarting it. And then on top of that, the other pressure for them to restart it is that the economy is worsening with each passing week that we're not reopening the strait. So now they're trying to sit around and see what's going to end up being worse. Sitting around and doing nothing, or getting militarily involved in the worst possible position, which is going to incur significant losses and a whole bunch of other headaches as a result. And I think that's why they're so hesitant about it, is because this is quite literally the worst position we could have ended up being in going into this war. So, Matt, did you have anything to add to that?
Generally not. I would just say I would pretty much agree with what you said for the most part.
And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next question here goes to none other than Old Warrior Fellow. He said, can they attach a JDAM kit to the B-61?
You could.
The nuclear, the thermonuclear? Man, that's wilding out, Old Warrior. I don't know about attaching a JDAM kit to a B-61. Does a B-61 even need a JDAM kit?
Well, I mean, the blast is going to be big enough that it doesn't need, like, precision accuracy like that. You know, it could just kind of land anywhere in the general area it needed to, and it's going to do the damage. But, I mean, you could put one on there, hypothetically, if you wanted to. It's just that with nuclear weapons, because of the damage, like the fireball zone that they have, it being so large, as long as it kind of lands within a reasonable distance, like several hundred feet or even 1,000 feet or so of its target, it is going to destroy it. So generally, you could put one on there. It's just that you really wouldn't need to with that kind of system. That's also why in U.S. Air Force nuclear doctrine for the use of tactical nuclear weapons, there really isn't any provisions for accuracy. It's just basically, you know, kind of eyeball it, pull up at this right angle at this kind of a distance, release the bomb, and however it falls, it's going to get its target that it was intended to. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $5 super chat from none other than Game Theory. I think you Game Theory as well. He said, do you think there will be AI gods in churches one day when AGI is achieved? If you looked at that Claude bot or Molt book, Molt book's what it ended up getting called. They were creating their own religions and stuff in there, like these AI agents were. They were literally creating like the lobster religion or something like that, like this crazy stuff going on in there. So It could, but obviously, I don't think anybody is going to be in favor of that except for loonies for the most part. So, we'll have to see. Also, they claim that AGI has been achieved already about a couple of weeks back. They claimed that, but I'm not totally sure if it's true. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say probably at some point in the future you would. I mean, if you look at like mega churches right now, they're already in that realm. I don't know if you've seen it, Matthew, but in some mega churches, they're literally making like AIs of Jesus and him talking
Oh
to
man.
like the people and stuff. It's like I'd have to say, folks, like I'm not trying to get into religion here, but I'm gonna have to give a hot take. I think that most mega churches are like just basically money making machines. Like I don't even think that's a hot take really anymore. But they're basically money making machines because if you look at anything that they preach or talk about, it has nothing to do with Christian ideological tenets whatsoever. It's basically just about making money by telling people that they need to tithe. Which
It's
by the
like
way is the whole reason Protestantism exists. It was a protest to tithing the Catholic Church, but then they tell you to tithe, and it's all just about making money. There's no religiosity in it whatsoever at this point.
it's like motivational speaking with like a Christian theme to it. It's really absurd. Also, by the way, like I don't make any bones at all about saying this right here. Those preachers out there with that prosperity gospel they keep talking about, which is like basically become a rich man on the backs of people donating to a church. It's like I just can't believe people fall for that stuff. Like I just can't believe that. Like I think most people are kind of wising up to that kind of stuff, but like goodness, like I grew up in an environment where generally like that wasn't really like understood that well. I don't know why, but I kind of like saw that it disgusted me from a very young age. Like I was always saying like there's something bad wrong with that, and I got a lot of pushback when I was younger for stuff like that. But I'm like prosperity gospel. I'm like I thought money was like the root of all evil. It's like why is this
Yeah.
gospel focusing on making and piling up money? It's like isn't that the complete opposite of what they're supposed to be teaching here?
Yeah, also, I just saw someone say Jesus said money is the way to heaven. He literally said the opposite. He said it's easier for let's see, I think it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get to heaven. Literally the complete opposite. So that's certainly not the case. But it's ridiculous to me to watch churches that well, these mega churches, because when you look at the people that run them, nothing about them it has any of that air of humility or anything else that the Bible speaks of. Like these people are like overly confident, overly arrogant, and it's all about money. Because if you listen to anything that they always say, if you throw money into my pot, then money is going to come flowing back to you. Like Jesus is like some sort of like a bank or something. Like, you give him some money, like as a loan or something like that, and he somehow gives it back to you. It's like, that's not really how that works. It's like I don't think there's literally anything in the Bible that says that, or and if people say that there is, they're cherry picking because there's just no way. Like
Oh, and
through
man, also all the exposés that have happened over the years on these churches. You know specifically the churches that do these really like elaborate theatrics and stuff like that. Like they'll go around with like a towel or something like that, and they'll fling it at people and they fall down and
oh
stuff.
yeah,
It came out like there was some expose. I can't remember who did it, but they went to a couple of those churches doing that, these mega churches. And they slowly found out through hidden cameras that they were hiring people in the crowd to go along with it. And then other people, because they saw the social proof of some of the actors falling down, the towel got flung at them. Other people were doing it just so they looked like they weren't, standing out like a sore thumb. So they just kind of went with it. So that way they didn't look awkward. So, I mean, also, I'm like, come on now. I'm like, all these theatrics, like when you see over the top theatrics like that, it's like, that's
oh.
already kind of a red flag, these over the top theatrics.
Do you remember the original ones, the original like scam one that like when you would go into the church, oh bless your soul, write down on this card what your ailment is, and you would write down your name and what's wrong with you, like my knee hurts, and then and then the wife would be sitting there out of like the I forgot what it is, the assembly room or whatever you want to call it. And she would be calling her husband up on stage on the earpiece. Okay, call up Donald Donahue. He has a hurt knee. And he'd be up on stage. I'm getting a premonition right now. Donnie Donahue I think you have a hurt knee. And then they bring him up and like pretend to like him. It was a whole trick. Like it was really like a soothsaying trick. And it's like that kind of stuff right there. That's the stuff that I don't like. And honestly, like, even smaller churches now try and imitate that kind of stuff. Some, not all of them. There's a lot of good ones out there, but like some of the smaller ones, because we kind of grew up in kind of like an environment where that sort of like like predatory nature wasn't really recognized well. Matthew Me like had like a innate sense for the stuff, but some smaller churches even would be trying to imitate like the mega church model on a smaller scale, about the whole tithing thing, and putting on basically a dog and pony show and not living to what you preach,
Well,
that sort of a deal.
There's that one preacher out there. I won't say his name, but I think most people know who I'm talking about. He was like, "Is if Jesus was alive today, he wouldn't be riding a donkey." Like acting
Oh,
like it's like wait a minute. It's like wait a second here. It's like I'm not trying to get into a deep religious conversation right now, but it's like like that's the whole point. He was riding the donkey. It's like it's supposed to be a humble entrance. That was the whole point. It's like, and he's supposedly a preacher. It's like you don't know this. It's like, what are you saying? Like that he would have he would have a like an Embraer 500, like a Gulfstream. It's like if Jesus was alive today, he wouldn't be in a Gulfstream. It's like that's crazy talk. Like the fact that people hear that stuff, so it's like, amen. It's like what the? It's like yo, use your brain. It's like well, that sounds crazy.
yeah, it's insane. Like it's nuts. Like and back in the day, folks, like like in the earlier days of Christendom, when it was just the Catholic Church, like they would have the monasteries, they would feed the poor, like things like that. Generally a life of poverty and a life of sacrifice. That's generally what monasteries were for people to dedicate themselves to sacrifice of basically anything worldly to try and devote themselves. And nowadays it's like the complete opposite that some people think. They think it's all about like a money-making system. And it's like, if you're into, like, honestly, folks, if you're into a religion with the concept that it's supposed to be making you money at the end of the day, it's like, that's not really being into religion. That's just being into a hustle and, trying to find like a quick achievement to it. It's like, I just don't know. But like to round the whole thing out though with this, I just don't like the megachurch stuff at all. Like it's very scammy to me. I haven't seen a single one yet that's like actually legitimate. They're all basically giant money making operations. And then also the personal lives of the people that run them. It's like, hell, they shouldn't be anywhere close to telling any other people how to live a moral and upright life. They don't live one at all. But anyways, with that, we're on the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Slow Sparks who put in a $50 super chat without a comment. But thank you very much, Slow Sparks, for the channel, even on a Sunday, and we do appreciate it. Support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Slow Sparks, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Dave. He said, can we agree that it seems like American society has been, or am I crazy? Oh, no, it's definitely on edge. Like, it's on edge for a couple different reasons. Number one, people have gotten highly obsessed with politics, and that's never good for, like, civil discourse. Politics breeds fights and conflict. It always has. And now everybody is, like, knee-deep in it, so that's a huge problem. Also, when people start running into financial difficulty, that obviously money, that creates a lot of conflict as well. So if people start running into that, they get very short fused with their temper, usually. So but between all those different reasons like that, and also people don't feel like they're getting a voice anymore. Like they feel like their voice is getting robbed from them. And that's also angering people quite a bit too. And also the young people aren't happy these days either. They're very unsocialized and stuff. Not necessarily at the fault of their own, but just based on circumstances they are. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that things certainly are a lot like what Matthew's saying. It's a very tense sort of a social time in the United States. It kind of always has been. I hate to say that because everyone always like hears me say that and it's like downplaying what we go through these days, but it's kind of always been like that. It's been like that to the degree that nobody knew until we saw it on the last show, that there was a shooting that happened in the US Capitol building in 1954 by a bunch of Puerto Rican nationalists. And it's like, you never, like, you always look back at those times of the 50s and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't too bad of a time. It was a nice time back then, a very peaceful time, until you look at like the race riots, the Capitol shootings, and everything else that was going on back then in the 50s. And then you start to see that it was a lot like today, because there's always a counterculture that's pushing against the main culture historically all the time. Like, when you think about it, we always say, oh, it's a tense time, people are on edge. And think about it. If you lived in the United States before the Civil War, you were in a very tense time in the country's history because it would end up boiling over into the country splitting in two and 600,000 Americans dying in that war that was to follow on the issue of whether slavery was legal or not. I mean, there were people shooting and killing each other in Kansas to try and make sure that the territory's referendum passed that Kansas would enter as either a free state or a slave state. There were people getting beat nearly to death on the floor of the House of Representatives before the Civil War, and then after the Civil War there was all kinds of tumult that was going on in the South and the military occupation districts, and everywhere else. I mean, like when you really look, and then after that, there was all the riots, and the Pinkertons were being brought in to put down the strikes, to put down the riots that were happening at the workplaces. There were managers and bosses getting killed by their workers. There was lynchings going on throughout the country. I mean, if you look at history just from a U.S. lens, and you really look at it, it always feels like the country is on the verge of collapse. It really, if you look at any country in the world, it always looks like it's on the verge of collapse because there's always some calamity going on, some social stress, or some sort of a social blight that's going on of some sort that's splitting the country in two somehow, some way. But I would say it feels rough these days, but honestly, if you live through any other period in time and you were growing up during it, like the war in Vietnam, for example, that had to have felt pretty tough. I mean, there's people burning their draft cards back then, people that were going over to Vietnam and they were deserting, or people who were coming back home wounded from the war, people who were literally getting into shootings at places like Kent State when the National Guard started firing into the crowd. Or in the 80s, for example, this is one that people don't know about, and this is actually what led to a lot of the firearms restrictions these days. The Black Panther Party took over the state capitol building in California with arms, with machine guns, and took over the building and occupied it for several days. And that's actually what led to the Reagan administration passing the National Firearms Act of 1986 to put significant restrictions on machine gun ownership in the United States and to make it much more difficult to get one, from them either being far more unaffordable or having to go through a lot more hoops to be able to buy one. And when you look at those sorts of instances, clearly life was never like sunshine and rainbows back then. There was always some tumult or some sort of tension somewhere. It's just that living through the new tensions and tumult of today seems unfamiliar, and that's why it seems like something new or something even worse. But I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to Chef Danny B. He said, my question is, with Russia going through a few, is the Russian military using the fuel to continue military actions against Ukraine, and much saying screw the citizens?
They actually are. They're generally using the fuel to be able to try and keep the war running. But even still, they have to use those gas stations in the rear lines. They are given priority to fuel access, however. But that's also going to be greatly restricting the situation that they're having logistically and maneuver-wise in the southern front for the larger part. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is like the last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Alls It Up. And they said, hi there, I just made my first donation tonight. And also, thank you, by the way, to the fundraiser. They said, my question is this. Is there any better value than a premium Costco rotisserie chicken for $4.99? I rest my case and keep up the good work. Honestly, there really isn't. Like, if you try to go get chicken and try to, boil it or, fry it up or something on your own, you'll probably be spending more than the rotisserie, in most cases, trying to do that than just getting their chicken. So I think Costco uses that as their loss leader. Like, they lose money on it or they break even, one or the other, just to lure people in. That's why they put it all the way at the back of the store, so you have to walk through all their other products, and you end up buying a whole bunch of other stuff you probably don't need on the way to the chicken. I'm not that person, though. I walk all the way to the back to get the chicken, and all the way back up to the front, and for just a chicken. So they probably hate me. But Enforcer, what say you?
There is no value better than a $4.99 rotisserie chicken, because you can't buy chicken breasts at that price on their own. You really can't buy any part of a chicken at that price with that amount of meat on their own. Like, if you try and buy chicken wings, they're way more expensive per the pound. You try and buy chicken breasts, way more expensive per the pound. If you buy the rotisserie, though, you get a couple of wings, you get the breasts, you get all the other cuts of generally the pieces of the chicken, and for $4.99. I mean, it's an amazing value when you really think about it, at that kind of a price, because you're getting a whole bunch of meat largely at $5.99. Well, more so $4.99, which you literally can't get in any other way with a chicken. But a huge thanks to your support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a great question, by the way. Great question. And also, I said support. I meant that support for the Costco chickens, not the monetary support of the channel. There's a live chat, but the Costco chickens is a great thing. And I gotta say, a humongous thanks to everyone so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure.
Wait a second. Wait a second. I gotta call something out. I saw a couple of people in the chat said boiled chicken. What are you, crazy? I mean, in the past, I'm not a chef, by the way, so I'm not like a culinary person. I'm sure anybody in the chat knows how to cook. They're probably like, what the hell? But I did, like, when I make like chicken and rice or something like that, I would boil the chicken. I would then like basically like do it like pulled pork, pull the chicken, and then mix it up with rice with butter, and it'll be like, chicken and rice at that point. Also, by the way, have y'all heard about this new thing they call it man kibble? It's like the ground beef. It's like the ground beef with the rice bowls. Like they're calling that man kibble. It's like a cheap meal for people to eat. I'm like, well,
The hell
like,
am I,
apparently
a cattle?
yeah, apparently these people have never eaten just a basic meal. It's like, that's not man kibble. Why are they like putting it down? It's like, I used to make that stuff all the time, and I still do, like occasionally, like not recently cooking very much, but it's like, I don't know why people are putting that down. A simple meal is a good meal.
Man, I've never heard of someone call something man kibble. That's like man, I gotta tell you, man, the livestockification of terms these days is unreal. You get treated like animals at the let's see, the TSA at the airport. You eat man kibble. Like, next thing you know, man, they're gonna be talking about having us like vaccinated and stuff at the doctors, like a whole bunch of cattle. Like, they're gonna be like, yep, we're coming in and you just vaccinate them by the hundreds, just bring them in a batch.
I eat the corporate slot bowls, as they call them, from Chipotle and, Mo Betta's and stuff like that. I love corporate slot bowls. I don't know why people hate on them. Also, I love the man kibble. It's really wild. Like that, I will say, I think young people are coming up with those names for that kind of stuff. That does actually make young people look out of touch. It's like, that's not like, there's nothing wrong if you're eating like simple. Like if you're not eating like a 5-star meal every night, like you shouldn't be, especially if you're on a budget. You shouldn't be eating a 5-star meal every night. So if you're eating chicken and rice and it's doing the job, or so-called man kibble, it's like, it's whatever.
Man, honestly, man, I'd have to agree. But on that note, folks, it is time for us to round this thing on out for the night. I've got to say a humongous thanks to all of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for each and every single one of y'all. Over the course of 3 hours and 7 minutes, we had 113,000 people watch the show, and 16.8 thousand people have been here over the course of tonight's stream. I've got to say a humongous thanks to each and every single one of y'all once again for watching, and of course, we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world after this unbelievably successful fundraiser that's raised $2,860 in support of Nova Ukraine. And so with that, also by the way, if there is a shorter video tomorrow, I'll be the one making it. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, we will see you all tomorrow, by the way, on a short video, maybe midday, and we'll have to see with that. And in the meantime, everybody's saying somebody else is going to be live. I think you might be a little bit late. But also, moving on from that, though, we will see you all on Tuesday night for the next Nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern to cover all of that news, and also maybe on a short video as well. But in that case, a huge shout out to everybody for that successful fundraiser once again. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and good night.